I've spent $60,000 just to make you happy, but why do you call me a wallet or an ATM? Lily, who is Max's wife, said angrily. We never asked for your help, she added. If it bothers you so much, why don't you stop the payments? Max said in a rude way. Even my eldest son Max acts like this, Lily continued. After making me pay for a $20,000 party and then a $40,000 wedding, they treat me like a money machine. Maybe I raised my son wrong. I won't let them boss me around anymore. I understand what you're saying. Are you sure about that? We won't let you see your grandchild, right? Max threatened. You don't have to worry. I'm happy to stop the payments from now on. It was a big change for Max and Lily, who have been taking care of me. My name is Chloe. I'm 56 years old. I've been struggling alone since my husband died 12 years ago. I work hard at a good company, where I've been for a long time. Some people might say I'm focused on my career. My children were teenagers when my husband passed away. Now they've finished college and have jobs. That makes me feel a bit better. I hope they'll start families of their own soon. As I thought about these things, I lived comfortably in the condo where I used to live with my children. Then, one day, Max called me and said, I want you to meet a woman I'm thinking of marrying. I was happy to agree. Max is turning 28 this year and works as a salesman for a big company. He used to be a bit of a player, but it seemed like he was finally settling down. On the day he brought the woman he wanted to marry, he said, Mom, it's been a while. This is my fiancée, Lily. Nice to meet you, as he introduced her. Lily worked as a receptionist at Max's company. She was very pretty, and I felt proud of my son for finding her. Congratulations to both of you. I'm here to support your happiness, I said with a smile as we talked. Eventually, they mentioned having an engagement party soon. I need to get ready. Mom, can you pay for the engagement party? It'll cost $20,000, Max asked me. I was surprised because I thought it would be around $10,000. But seeing how happy they were, I agreed and said, sure, it's a happy occasion. Later, my oldest daughter, Mia, came to visit. How's work going, Mia? I asked. The deadline was yesterday. I'm doing fine, Mom. Don't worry, Mia replied. Mia draws manga for a living. She hasn't had a big success yet, but she has her own series and earns enough to live on. She's always been good at drawing and loves manga, so it's the perfect job for her. By the way, Mom, Max is getting married, right? Mia asked. Yes, he came by with his fiancée, Lily, and they asked for $20,000 for the engagement party. I told her. Wow, that's a lot of money, Mia said. Well, they said they're going to use it for their wedding and to give gifts to thank people. Is that how it works? And so on the day of the engagement party, I gave them the $20,000 as promised. Both Lily and her parents seemed very happy. We'll use this money to start our new life together, they said as they put away the $20,000. They didn't give any gifts of thanks like I expected, but I told myself that's just how engagement parties go. As long as they have a happy marriage, it's okay, I thought. But a few days later, Max surprised me. We're having a big wedding with lots of guests, maybe around 250 people, he said. That sounds great. Mom, can you pay for the wedding up front? What? I have to pay. I thought weddings were paid for by the couple, I said. I'm counting on you, Mom. It's normal for parents to pay for the wedding. I already gave a lot of money for the engagement party. Lily's parents can't help, and I'll pay you back for the wedding gift, Max explained. I reluctantly looked at the bill Max had brought. To my surprise, it was for $40,000. The thought of paying so much money up front made me feel dizzy. How big is this wedding going to be? Isn't this too much? I asked. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and Lily wants everything to be perfect. Plus, don't we want Lily's parents to see how happy she is? Max said, making me feel trapped. I couldn't say no. Okay, it's a special occasion, I agreed. Max smiled and thanked me before leaving the room. Later, I paid the $40,000 up front to the wedding venue. It was tough to use my retirement savings, but I did it for my child's happiness. 2 months later, on the wedding day, the venue was more luxurious than I expected. Mia and I arrived early to get ready. As I was about to knock on the bride and groom's door, I heard them talking. I can't believe we're having such a fancy wedding thanks to Mom, Lily said. Yeah, and she gave us $20,000 for the engagement party, Max added. I even bought a new bag. What a great wallet, more like an ATM. Let's keep taking from it, Max. Mia and I were shocked to hear this. Lily happily said. If we ask her, she'll probably pay for the rest of the wedding, right? Of course she will. Then let's use the wedding gift for a honeymoon trip to Hawaii, and we'll bring my parents too. How about buying a high-rise apartment for our new home? That sounds perfect. Let's get my mother to pay. She has the money, Lily said. My hand was shaking as I raised it to knock on the door. Mia took my shoulder and led me away. I took a deep breath and held Mia's hand. Mia, there's something I need you to find out when the ceremony starts, I said. Sure, Mom. Leave it to me. And so Max and Lily's wedding began. I couldn't stop thinking about their earlier conversation. When the MC introduced me and the spotlight fell on me, all I could do was bow. Mia, who had been going around toasting, came back. Mom, I checked with Lily's relatives. Both of her parents are fine. That's terrible. We need to confront them. I'll stay by your side, Mia said as it was time for the first outfit change. Lily left first, then Max followed. Now it's the groom's turn. His mother, Chloe, who raised him on her own, will escort him, the announcer said. I walked down the aisle to meet Max. Max seemed a bit drunk but happy. He said into the microphone, "This is my amazing mom." I kept a serious face and walked with Max out of the hall to the dressing room. Mia was there and talked to Max. Max, I need to ask you something. What is it, sis? Hurry up, I need to change, Max said quickly as he undressed. Mia heard their earlier conversation in the dressing room. How could you talk about Mom like that? She asked. You heard us? Well, whatever. Max replied rudely. Lily, who had changed into her dress, came in. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law, what's going on? Mia asked. Lily, we found out that your parents are healthy. They both have good jobs. Why are you making Mom pay for everything? What's happening? Mia asked. Lily exaggeratedly acted scared. Is this some kind of bullying from a sister-in-law? Scary, Lily said mockingly. I lost my patience with her disrespectful attitude. I've already paid $60,000 to make you happy, and yet you treat people like they're just wallets or ATMs. What kind of behavior is that? Lily laughed as if it was a joke, acting all superior over such a small amount. We're not in debt to you. Plus, it's normal for the groom's parents to pay for the wedding, right? But you lied about your parents being sick to buy a new bag, Mia said. Oh, you were listening in. That's a terrible habit. Watch your mouth, Mia, Lily angrily replied. Then she looked at Mia. I don't want to be lectured by an older sister who's still single at 30 and has a weird job as a manga artist. Maybe you're too nerdy to get married. You're hopeless when it comes to marriage, sis. Mia was stunned into silence. How dare you speak to me like that if you want to see your grandkids, Mom, Lily said. Mia couldn't believe what she was hearing. How dare you talk to me like that? I tried to scold them, but Max laughed and said, if you're going to talk like that, try stopping the payments. After all, I'm successful. I can handle it. It would be a pity to lose the money. I paid $20,000 for the engagement party and $40,000 for the wedding. And this is how they treat me. No thanks, only meanness. I must have made a mistake in raising my son. I've had enough. I won't let them control me anymore. I heard what you said. Are you sure? If you don't listen, you won't see your grandchild, Max threatened. But I said firmly, that's okay. You don't need to visit. I'll happily stop paying. Max and Lily were shocked. I'm ending our relationship here. I wish you all the best, I said, taking Maya's hand, and we left the place. We could still hear the happy sounds of the party as we walked away. A month later, Mia and I were having tea at home when the intercom buzzed loudly. Oh, Mom, it's Max. What should we do? Let him in, please, Mia said. Max, whom I hadn't seen for a month, looked very tired and worn out. Why the sudden visit, Max? I asked. Mom, you must have got the bill for the wedding venue by now. Why haven't you paid it? Huh? Oh, the bill for the remaining money. It was $45,000, right? I got it, but I don't have to pay it, I replied. Don't say that. We didn't get many wedding gifts and couldn't pay the bill, so now we're in debt, Max said. Maya laughed and said, from what I heard at the wedding, you two don't have a good reputation. Max, you've been acting bossy at work, and Lily, you've been mean to other women and showing off your looks. No wonder people didn't want to give you wedding gifts. Hey sis, stay out of this, Max said. I sighed and said, you both haven't been considerate of anyone around you, not just me. You caused the wedding expenses, so you should pay them yourselves. Max begged desperately. Mom, I'm in trouble. Lily can't stop spending money, and even her parents are taking advantage of me. Lily's love for money isn't a surprise, Max, and considering Lily's behavior, I can imagine her parents are the same. Please, Mom, think about helping us. Give us some money, Max begged. I replied sternly, you were the one who said, I'm successful, it'll be easy, and told me to stop paying, right? And didn't you say we were cutting ties? I don't have to give you any more money. Mom, don't call me Mom. I don't want to be called that by someone who only sees me as a money source. I'd like you to pay back what you owe for the wedding and engagement party, but I'll let it go. Please leave. Max, who looked shocked before, now looked angry. Are you really okay with this, Mom, cutting ties like this? How will you spend your old age without a husband? Don't you want to see your grandchild? Before I could respond, Mia stepped in. Don't worry. I'll be with Mom. And what can you, an unsuccessful comic artist, do? You can't even have kids. Just be quiet. Max was furious. Ah, so scary. You make fun of me as a failed manga artist, but my manga was one of the best-selling this year. Did you know? It's going to be an anime and movie next year. I'm in a much better financial situation than you with your debts, Mia said confidently. She then revealed her successful career. Max noticed something on her finger. Hey sis, that ring. What's going on? Mia showed the ring on her left finger. Yes, that's what's happening. I'm getting married to my editor. He's important at a big publishing company, so we can take care of Mom. We don't need you anyway. We never planned for our kids to take care of us, Mia said. Thanks, Mia. We'll handle everything ourselves. We'll invite Mom to the wedding, but you don't have to come, I told Max firmly. Mia and I guided Max towards the front door. Please, Mom, and you too, sis, Max said, trying to appeal to us. Then he asked, are you going to give us money? I had a realization. That director at your wedding is a client of my company. It seems your special treatment was because of me. But I've stopped it. Handle things on your own now. Goodbye, I said. Mia and I pushed Max outside and locked the door firmly. Max protested outside, but after a while, it became quiet. A year went by. Right after that, I sold the house to avoid Max and Lily's visits. I bought an apartment for older people to live in when I get old. A neighbor from my old place told me Max and Lily came and made a scene, asking why I wasn't there. So I think selling the house was the right choice. Max and Lily gave up on their dream of a fancy apartment and now live in a small place. Max got demoted at work because of his behavior. He's still working, surprisingly. Lily stopped working after getting married but kept spending money. They ran out of money quickly. Even with debts, Lily keeps spending, and her parents keep asking for money. They fight a lot. I hope they learn how hard it is to earn money and appreciate people. But that might be too much to ask. Mia and I still have a good relationship. Her husband is nice to me and they're expecting a baby. I can't wait to spoil my daughter and grandchild. That's what keeps me going every day.
My sister is super beautiful, right? I've always been proud of her. The day I met my husband's family for the first time, he told me this. At that moment, I took it as a sign he was family person, but I later realized that was a huge mistake. His sister Cindy was indeed beautiful but had a terrible personality. Every time she saw me, she'd say things like, ugly girl, or your outfit's lame. My husband is an extreme sister's boy and always takes Cindy's side. I was getting fed up with him. One day, when I inherited a luxury car from my father's estate, trouble ensued. My husband said, Cindy and her husband want the car. Cindy also agreed. We just had a baby, so it's perfect. Of course, I refused, but Cindy took the car without permission. Hours later, she started calling me non-stop in a panic. My name is Sarah Morris, 28 years old. I work hard every day as an office worker. I met my husband Billy through a mutual friend. We hit it off due to his bright and kind nature and married after about 6 months of dating. We began living together in our own house. We've been married for about 2 years, but we don't have children yet. From the outside, we might seem like a happy couple. However, since our marriage, I've always had uneasy feelings toward Billy and one other person, his sister Cindy. Cindy is 4 years older than Billy. She has a model-like beautiful face and an excellent figure. She looks young, and some might even mistake her for being younger than me. Despite her looks, she has a very bad personality, always gossiping about others. She is selfish and loud. She must get what she wants. I'm more on the plain and unremarkable look, so she really looked down on me. She constantly makes snide remarks at me. Hey, you've gained weight recently, right? Your short legs look even shorter. And what about that outfit? Its color and pattern are so dull and gloomy. You're not beautiful, so you should at least try to dress well. Yes. I suppose so. It's good that my brother married you. Otherwise, you would have been single forever, right? With your looks, you could only marry someone like my brother. It was utterly rude. Why do I have to be put down this way? Cindy not only looks down on me, but also thinks little of her own brother, Billy. Billy must have had a hard time having such a sister. But he didn't dislike her. In fact, Billy was an extreme sister's boy. He idolizes Cindy and does whatever she says, so they never argue. I once asked Billy about this. Why don't you dislike your sister, even though she treats you so roughly? It's not a strange thing. My sister is super beautiful, right? I'm proud of that. I didn't quite understand what he meant. What do you mean? I've always been bad at both studies and sports, with nothing to boast about. But when I show off my sister, everyone is surprised and praises her. That's why I don't think about opposing her. He lacks self-confidence but feels superior because his sister is beautiful? It's similar to people who brag about knowing famous celebrities. I thought it was a pathetic story based on others' achievements, but I didn't say it aloud. Saying it wouldn't change the nature Billy had become over the years. Cindy also seems to understand and exploit Billy's feelings. She lives in an apartment near our house with her husband, who is an elite company employee often away on business trips. He was at our wedding but seemed a quiet and gentle man. When her husband isn't around, and Cindy needs a man's help, that's when Billy's needed. She would call him for trivial matters. The light bulb's about to go out, come and change it. There's a cockroach, come and get rid of it. The groceries are too heavy, come pick me up in the car. Buy groceries in my stead. And so on. Since our honeymoon, such has been the case, and I've hardly had any time alone with Billy. Probably Cindy calls Billy over to annoy me. I think it's inappropriate for someone over 30, but Billy always happily goes. Even when I try to stop him, he doesn't listen. Hey, are you going to your sister's place again? Isn't this too frequent? Shouldn't she handle simple chores herself? Then he argued. Don't be so cold. My sister relies on me, and it would be pitiful not to go. I need to be there for her. However, even when Billy finishes the tasks, Cindy hardly offers him coffee before sending him back. That's fine. I want to be helpful to my sister. He thinks. I can't comprehend his mindset. That was truly the worst day. We had a reservation for a fancy dinner on my birthday. Right before we were supposed to leave, he got a call from Cindy. I had a bad feeling. Hello, Cindy? What's up? Okay, I'll be right there. Wait. Did your sister call you out for something again? She said it started raining while she was out shopping. She doesn't have an umbrella and seems really stuck. Are you really putting my birthday aside for such a trivial matter? I was astonished. She could wait for the rain to stop or take a taxi home, there were plenty of options. Yet, Billy was eager to go and pick up Cindy. So, you were supposed to celebrate my birthday today, right? What are we going to do about dinner? Just go by yourself. You can eat my portion too. We can celebrate your birthday next year. I'm going to pick up my sister. What? Something snapped in my mind. The thought of continuing to live like this was unbearable. That day, when Billy came back, I told him I wanted a divorce. I've reached my limit. I can't continue with someone who neglects me like this. Let's get a divorce. However, Billy was shaken by my words. What? Divorce? Why? I'm not cheating, and I do my share of the chores. Why would you want to divorce me? Billy's confused face made it clear he didn't understand my feelings. I explained the situation and asked him to distance himself from Cindy, but he said, I can't do that. If so, then we have no choice but to divorce. I declared, but he cried. I don't want that either. We argued a lot about this issue and talked for a long time. In the end, we didn't divorce, nor did we distance ourselves from Cindy. Instead, we made a promise that Billy would consult with me before doing anything for Cindy. Considering his past behavior, I couldn't trust Billy easily. That's why I decided to prepare the divorce papers in advance. Billy does the household chores if I ask him to. Maybe he will change. I thought and decided to wait and see. Then one day, tragedy struck. My father suddenly collapsed and passed away. The ambulance was too late. My father was always kind to his family. To think he would die so suddenly. I was so sad I couldn't stop crying. However, sad as I was, I had to prepare for the funeral. My mother, left alone, must have been anxious. Cindy, my sister-in-law, said, I'm not good with such gloomy places. And didn't attend the funeral. It's terrible that she wouldn't attend her brother-in-law's parents' funeral. After my father's funeral, my mother said, I want you to inherit your father's car. She doesn't have a license, and my car is old. My father's car was a large luxury vehicle. He had taken great care of it, and it held sentimental value. We should cherish it as a memory of my father. That's what I thought. But when Cindy came over with her newborn baby, she started an unbelievable conversation. Just stopping by. The car parked outside, the one you inherited? It looks so cool. It would suit me well. What? As I was confused by Cindy's sudden remark, Billy interjected with a grin. You know, my sister's family want a car. I thought it would be just right, so I told her about your father's car. Yeah. We just had a baby, so it's perfect. Give it to us as a gift. Billy, there's no problem with me taking the car, right? Of course, it's fine. Sarah has her small car anyway. Billy and Cindy were moving forward with their conversation, leaving me out. I quickly intervened. Wait. I'm planning to get rid of my small car, so I could give that to you. But not my father's car. I firmly refused. How could I give my late father's precious car to Cindy, with whom I'm not close? Cindy looked very displeased. A big car is necessary. We need it to transport the kids. My husband wouldn't want a small car either. Stop being stingy and hand over the car. If that's the case, you should buy one yourself. No matter what you say, I will not hand over the car. It's a memento from my father. I couldn't back down. Then Billy chimed in. Sarah, don't be so selfish. The luxury car suits my beautiful sister Cindy much better, doesn't it? It doesn't match your plain face. Just graciously give her your father's car. Even in such a situation, Billy sided with Cindy. That's when my patience finally ran out. I refuse. I will not give up the car. I stood my ground firmly. That day, Cindy backed down, grumbling, but eventually returned home. However, I knew she wouldn't give up easily. That's when I decided to take drastic action. It was time to cut ties with them completely. 2 days later, my luxury car was taken without permission. The culprit was likely Cindy. I had left the keys in my room, and it seems she had sneaked in when she visited our house. But there was no need to panic. I had prepared beforehand. Hours later, I received non-stop calls from my sister-in-law. I wanted to ignore them, but she was persistent, so I reluctantly answered. What's going on? I might get arrested by the police. Cindy had been caught by the police at her favorite brand shop driving the luxury car, and she was accused of stealing it. I responded. Oh, you realized? Well, it's not a strange story. You stole my car, so it's natural that you would get arrested. Don't say such horrible things like I stole it. I was just taking the car. Billy even said, don't worry about Sarah, just take the car. So, this car is mine. Quickly explain to the police that it's a misunderstanding. Cindy was still ordering me around, even now. I decided it was time to give her a dose of reality. Unfortunately, that excuse won't work. Billy and I are already divorced, so we are now strangers. What? You got divorced? Cindy screamed in shock. Indeed, after she had left our house previously, I had submitted the divorce papers at the town hall. Although Billy had apologized after our last big fight and promised there wouldn't be a next time, I had already filled out the divorce papers and kept them ready. When I felt that Cindy might steal my father's car after our argument, I immediately went to submit the divorce papers. Since Billy and I were now strangers, and Cindy was effectively nothing to me, her excuse of just borrowing my sister-in-law's car wouldn't hold. The house we had lived in was originally my grandmother's, so I was the legal owner. I insisted that Billy leave, and he was kicked out, crying. I don't want to split up. But my decision to divorce was firm. I had been betrayed by Billy multiple times over Cindy, and when he sided with his sister over my father's car, I had lost all affection for him. After kicking Billy out, I noticed my father's heirloom car was missing. I immediately knew it was Cindy's doing and tried to call her, but she didn't answer, likely on purpose since I could see the read receipts on the messages. That's when I decided to report it to the police. It was a clear case of theft. Someone had entered the house and taken the car keys and the car without permission. I had informed the police about a few places Cindy might go, so they found her quickly. Once she realized her situation was dire, she called me, pleading. Please forgive me. My husband thinks you gave me the car. If he finds out I stole it, he will divorce me. I coldly refused her plea. No. I can't forgive someone who stole my father's heirloom car. If you hadn't stolen the car, you wouldn't have been arrested by the police. You brought this on yourself. I'm truly sorry. I won't ever do something like this again. It's too late. You have always looked down on me and ridiculed me, why should I help you? Let's handle this through lawyers from now on. With that, I hung up. Cindy was subsequently arrested and ended up with a criminal record. When my in-laws asked about the situation, I explained everything that had led to the divorce and played back recordings of Cindy's harsh words and Billy siding with his sister. My in-laws are good people and apologized repeatedly for what their daughter had done. They even offered a substantial sum as compensation for the trouble caused by Billy and Cindy. I liked my in-laws, so although I said, "Don't worry about it," they insisted, and I gratefully accepted. I regret becoming distant from them, but I don't regret divorcing Billy. Just when I thought it was all settled, the story continued. A month later, Billy called, asking to get back together. I had been busy and completely forgot to block his number. He started updating me on things I didn't ask about. Cindy was released but was divorced by her husband for stealing. Apparently, she's lost custody of her children due to her lack of financial capability. Cindy always had a spending problem and often neglected the kids. Her husband had been considering divorce regardless of my situation. Billy had said that his sister and her husband wanted the car, but her husband was not involved in the theft. Instead, he repeatedly apologized to me for Cindy stealing my father's car. Cindy is now working in a factory owned by Billy's relatives. She can't escape because she is surrounded by strict people and she's working hard. Billy, too, was kicked out by his in-laws for not stopping Cindy's outburst. He wasn't disowned, but he's not allowed to live in the family home anymore. Sarah, now that you're gone, I finally understand how much I took you for granted. The house is a mess, and I'm just eating microwave meals. I was wrong. I've reflected on my actions. Can we start over? I flatly rejected Billy's plea for reconciliation. It's impossible. I no longer have any affection for you. I can't be with someone who prioritizes his sister over me. If you contact me again, I'll consult the police." With that, I hung up without waiting for his response and blocked his number. Since then, I've been enjoying peaceful days. I'm put off by marriage for now and am planning to enjoy living alone for a while. Eek! The venue staff screamed. In a flash, a Coca-Cola stain spread on the pristine white wedding dress. On the morning of my wedding day, I was dumbfounded by what happened. A child did it. The ceremony is cancelled now, my mother-in-law said, laughing. On the most significant day of my life. She looked satisfied to have given me the ultimate harassment. Completely unaware of the shocking things that were about to unfold. I'm Amy Brown. I'm 28 years old and work at a company. I've decided to marry Howard Smith, who is 2 years my senior and a colleague at work. After dating for 2 years. I met Howard 3 years ago, when I was transferred to the PR department where he was a senior. He was the son of the company president and famously the next president, so at first, I was nervous and unsure how to interact with him. However, he never rested on his laurels and was passionate about his work. And he was humble towards me, his junior. One day, he invited me out for a meal and confessed his feelings. Initially, we started as friends, but as we dated more, I found joy in being with him and naturally fell for him. By the time we had been dating for 2 years, we had become indispensable to each other. I had met his parents, who were always welcoming. And we had started discussing our future. That's why when he proposed, I immediately accepted. The following is when I went to greet his family at their home to announce our marriage. "Hello. Long time no see." His mother greeted me with a smile. His father, the company president, kindly said, "Good to see you. Make yourself at home." We were led into the spacious living room, and I sat on the sofa opposite his parents. After some small talk, he announced our marriage. "I'm going to marry Amy." "Oh, really?" At that moment, my mother-in-law looked me up and down as if sizing me up. I nervously looked down. I've been with her for 2 years and realized she's the one. His father joyfully said, "That's great. Howard, congratulations. I'm relieved Amy is your partner. I want you two to be happy." I felt relieved to hear this. "Are you serious?" But my relief was short-lived as my mother-in-law began sternly. "Amy, how did you get close to him? How did you ingratiate yourself with him?" The usual elegant and calm face of his mother had transformed into something monstrous. "Mom, calm down." He tried to soothe her, but her anger seemed uncontainable. "Amy, your family runs a small bar in the countryside, right?" "Yes, that's right." I can't believe Howard would even consider marrying someone from that family. I thought it was just a casual thing when I let them go out. "Stop it." His father restrained her as she looked ready to grab me by the collar. She must be after the money. I won't accept such a filthy girl as a bride. Her breakdown terrified me, and I froze. "Mom, enough," he said calmly. "She's important to me. I don't know what you've misunderstood, but I've always been serious and sincerely dating her. I've told you many times to marry someone suitable. A girl like this lowers our family's status. Be quiet now," his father sternly told her. "Amy, I'm really sorry for my wife's rude remarks." I felt embarrassed as the president apologized. "No. I approve of your marriage. She's the woman Howard chose, so you should accept her too." His mother looked down and remained silent for the rest of the day. We later visited my parents, and they approved of the marriage. While it was a concern that his mother hadn't accepted our marriage, we registered our union. Regarding work after marriage, I liked my job and wanted to keep my social connections, so I decided to continue. My husband also approved of me continuing to work. The wedding preparations started around this time. On days off, my mother-in-law began visiting our house uninvited. My husband said it was okay not to greet her, but I couldn't ignore her, so I let her in. Then, she invariably started with her insults and sarcasm. "So, Amy is continuing her job? Quit your job to support Howard. As a future president's wife, you're disqualified." Every time my mother-in-law visited, it made my stomach hurt. "Mom, please go home." My husband always protected me, but his mother's sarcasm never ceased. I believed she would accept me eventually. And even when she came over and spewed sarcasm, I faced it. Later, when I went to try on the wedding dress, my mother-in-law forcibly came along. No matter what I wore, she complained, "That doesn't suit you at all. You have no class, whatever you wear looks cheap." My husband tried to protect me by repeatedly telling her to stop harassing me. When my husband wasn't home, she would come over. And the insults would get even worse. "Everyone will be disappointed that you're the bride. Get a divorce quickly." I've been mentally exhausted by my mother-in-law's relentless nagging. "Please don't say such things." I responded with a forced smile, but I felt down inside. The thought of having to deal with my mother-in-law for the rest of my life saddened me. My husband has repeatedly asked his father to stop my mother-in-law's harassment and insults, and it seems his father has been trying to persuade her. However, my mother-in-law insists she's done nothing wrong. As a company president, my father-in-law can't always keep an eye on her. He told me to avoid going out during breaks. However, this led to her calling me directly. "You're just a useless bride, so it's time for you to leave," she screamed through the phone. I had been patient until now. But this time I couldn't help but cry. "Amy, I'm really sorry for making you feel this way." Finally, my husband went to his parents' house and told his mother that he would cut ties with her. "You want to cut ties with me?" Hearing this, my mother-in-law seemed to reflect and apologized to me. "Amy, I'm really sorry for everything. I didn't mean to harass you." Upon hearing this, my husband said, "No, it was definitely harassment. Please don't come to our house again." His father added a firm word. "Enough is enough." Since then, my mother-in-law's harassment has stopped completely. She no longer comes to our house, and the phone doesn't ring. Thanks to this, our wedding preparations proceeded smoothly. I thought I had been freed from my mother-in-law's harassment. Half a year after our registration, we welcomed the morning of our wedding in the fall. The wedding was planned with 500 guests, including company associates, friends, and relatives of both sides. I was in the bride's waiting room early in the morning, busy with makeup and hair preparations, including the ceremony, reception, and a change of dresses. 3 gowns were prepared and hung facing forward, each chosen especially for this day. In the midst of this, ignoring the staff's attempt to stop her, my mother-in-law entered the room with her 4-year-old nephew. "Good morning, Amy." My mother-in-law seemed in a good mood, smiling. "Mother, I'm sorry, but I'm in the middle of preparations. So please wait in the relatives' waiting room." I was about to change, so I told her that. "Come here, Sean." Ignoring me, my mother-in-law took her nephew's hand and stood in front of the dresses. That's when it happened. Her nephew opened the cap of the Coca-Cola he was holding. At that moment, Coca-Cola sprayed out forcefully. Eek! The venue staff screamed. In an instant, a Coca-Cola stain spread on the pristine white wedding dress. The staff in the room were frozen. Not only the hem, but the Coca-Cola had splashed up to the chest area, leaving a large stain. The staff hurriedly tried to wipe off the stain with a handkerchief. The hairdresser was stunned by the incident. The nephew seemed not to fully understand the situation but cried due to the commotion. A child did it. The ceremony is cancelled now, my mother-in-law said, laughing. I was dumbfounded by the shock. If the stain couldn't be removed, what would I do? There was an option to wear the dress for the color change, but unfortunately, the staff tried to remove the stain, but it seemed it wouldn't come off immediately. More staff arrived, and the scene became chaotic. The dress might not return to its original state. As I looked at the dress, I suddenly realized, that's not my dress. Huh? My mother-in-law's smile faded. It turned out that it wasn't my dress. At first glance, it looked identical, but the embroidery was completely different. The venue staff hurriedly checked the dress. We sincerely apologize. That dress isn't meant for the bride. We mistakenly got another one ready instead. What? Then whose dress was it? I became anxious. We will prepare your dress immediately. The staff took the stained dress and left the room. My mother-in-law, who had been happy until now, turned pale at the fact that she had stained someone else's dress. I immediately sensed from her expression that she had intended to stain my dress, using her nephew. The way the Coca-Cola sprayed out was unusual, suggesting she might have tampered with it before entering the room. Regardless, using her nephew for such extreme harassment was unforgivable. I'll be excused for a moment. Concerned by her nephew's crying, which could be heard outside, my sister-in-law entered the room. Mom, weren't you just supposed to check in? Upon entering, my sister-in-law was surprised to see her Coca-Cola-covered nephew. What happened? She wiped his face with a handkerchief and tried to calm her inconsolable nephew. I explained what had happened. What? He stained someone else's dress? My sister-in-law was very surprised. Overwhelmed by anger, I blurted out my thoughts. No, it's not your son's fault. Your mother made him do it. What? My sister-in-law looked at my mother-in-law. No, that's not true. Stop making false accusations. My mother-in-law hurriedly defended herself. He was just trying to drink the Coca-Cola when it sprayed out. It was an accident. However, my sister-in-law countered. But Sean can't buy Coca-Cola, right? And he's still too young to have had it before. Why did you give it to him? Kids like Coca-Cola, right? I thought he'd drink it. My mother-in-law stumbled over her words. I seized the moment. The way the Coca-Cola sprayed out was not normal. Did you tamper with it before giving it to Sean? No, that's not true. Please stop. My mother-in-law held her head as she responded. It was an accident, I say. Really? My sister-in-law pressed my mother-in-law as my nephew continued to cry. Perhaps finally realizing her defeat, my mother-in-law confessed. I tampered with the Coca-Cola and got Sean to pop it open right in front of the dress. Hearing this, my sister-in-law sighed heavily. Why would you do such a thing? She asked, holding her head. It's all this bride's fault. What? I was puzzled by her response. I've been trying to guide this bride, but she complained that it was too harsh. Because of that, Howard told me he'd cut ties with me. And even my husband started to dislike me. My mother-in-law shouted, pointing at me. I was so taken aback by her words that I retorted. Regardless of whether that was guidance, there's no excuse for ruining a dress on the day of the ceremony. Isn't this just harassment? My mother-in-law became infuriated in response. Because you made me feel terrible. Despite her history of harassing me, she seemed to justify her revenge because she felt wronged. I don't care about that. The harassment was real. And both Howard and your husband were concerned for me. Being disliked by them is a result of your own actions, isn't it? I responded calmly. I will never accept a bride of your background. She approached me, raising her voice. I don't care if you don't accept me. I had long lost any desire to get along with my mother-in-law. Everyone, please calm down. My sister-in-law intervened between us. The ceremony is soon. This isn't the time to argue. She then turned to me and apologized. I'm really sorry my mom caused trouble on the day of the ceremony. It might be difficult, but please try to calm down. Amy, you don't have to worry about anything. It seemed my sister-in-law hadn't been aware of the ongoing harassment. But she seemed to grasp the situation somewhat. As she said this while grabbing my mother-in-law's arm. Let go of me. My mother-in-law protested, but my sister-in-law ignored her. I won't allow Mom to bother you any longer, so please switch gears and prepare. She forcibly took my mother-in-law and the crying nephew out of the room. I was still quite shaken after they left. I hadn't expected such an incident on the morning of my wedding. Meanwhile, my dress was properly arranged. However, I worried about the owner of the stained dress. As I pondered, the beautician brought me a warm drink, and I tried to calm my nerves. There were company associates among the attendees, and I needed to compose myself. Somehow, I managed to refocus and headed to our wedding. Ultimately, it was a very happy ceremony. Everyone who had been part of my life celebrated with us, which was both gratifying and joyous. However, when I glanced at my husband's relatives, the atmosphere seemed somber. Perhaps news of my mother-in-law's actions had spread. Later, I learned from the venue staff that the dress ruined by the Coca-Cola was another bride's haute couture dress. Our wedding took place in the morning, but there was another ceremony in the evening at the same venue, and that was the dress intended for use. The woman supposed to wear it cried upon learning what happened. They managed to arrange another dress on the day, but not being able to wear the dress she had prepared for her once-in-a-lifetime event was irrevocable. The venue, responsible for the dress mix-up, compensated the woman. Nevertheless, my father-in-law, accompanied by my mother-in-law, apologized to the woman and paid a substantial amount in damages. Of course, money couldn't solve everything. I blamed myself, thinking none of this would have happened if I had been on better terms with my mother-in-law. When my husband learned about the incident, he apologized repeatedly for the hardship I faced. He was so infuriated that he decided to cut all ties with his mom. About 6 months after the wedding, my in-laws divorced. My father-in-law always felt uneasy about my mother-in-law. Although she appeared to be a sweet and sophisticated president's wife, she was infamous for causing trouble for anyone she didn't like when no one was watching. Due to ongoing troubles, he hired a detective to investigate her, which revealed her wrongdoings, including harassment of neighbors and shouting at store staff. He was also fed up with her slander and harassment towards me. My father-in-law had planned to divorce after Howard's wedding had settled down. Despite some residual feelings for his longtime spouse, this incident was the last straw. Initially, my mother-in-law refused to divorce, but after separation, and facing my steadfast father-in-law, she eventually agreed. Losing her position as the president's wife and being disowned by her son meant she would no longer harass me. Only my sister-in-law seemed to care for the now dejected mother-in-law. But my nephew, possibly traumatized, cried every time he saw her, making it difficult for them to meet. It was all the seeds my mother-in-law had sown. I felt no sympathy for her. I am now enjoying a happy married life. There's nothing scarier than someone who is blissfully unaware. Right now, my house is a scene of chaos. In front of me stand my husband and his mistress, both with smiles plastered across their faces. She's a promising entrepreneur, my husband says with delight, his mistress eagerly chiming in. He's been struggling with our lowly life together. I'm appalled. After all his declarations of love to me, this is the reality. Moreover, my husband doesn't know my true nature. Here's the divorce papers and my husband and his mistress seem drunk on their victory, mocking me. But this is all temporary, because my name is Judy, a 42-year-old housewife who is also engaged in something else. My husband Dan, also the same age, is the ace of the sales department. Dan is kind to me, always praising my cooking and cleaning. Judy, your cooking is delicious. Better than my mother's. It's tasty and well-balanced. Even your cleaning and laundry are nearly perfect. And yet, you're not boastful at all. I really married a great woman, Dan always says, praising me every day. But I know that recently, Dan has been cheating on me. Honestly, I can't stand his theatrical behavior. Despite having a mistress, he's still living at his wife's home. I can't understand his feelings at all. My love for Dan has cooled. But I've heard that divorcing is troublesome, so I continue this facade. One day, Dan suddenly brought his mistress Tiffany to our house. Who is this woman? More sighing than shouting, I asked Dan this. But he flipped the script on me. She's a promising entrepreneur. Tiffany is still in her 20s, but she's capable and her business is thriving. I'm going to remarry her, so please let's get divorced. We'll take this house, you go back to your parents, Dan said. Dan is struggling with our lowly life together. Dan is a wonderful man, but why such a pig-like woman as a wife? It's really laughable. Tiffany mocked me alongside Dan. They both sneered at me. I knew the time had come, so I took out the divorce papers from the cupboard and told Dan to write on them. Oh, a sensible ugly woman. That's right. To be honest, I've been bored with your repetitive cooking and your messy ironing. And there are places you haven't cleaned properly. Oh, I could claim compensation, but can a clumsy woman like you even do that? For a wife who's fat and ugly and can't do anything, you're quite considerate. Yes, please, let's divorce quickly. After all, you pig woman, you're not a match for Dan. We've only been living thanks to Dan. That's why I can't stand delusional ugly women. A young and capable woman like me is a much better match for Dan. Dan and Tiffany continued to hurl insults at me. My feelings had already cooled, so I neither cried nor paid any attention. After finishing the divorce papers, Dan said, "File these, get out," dismissing me as if I were nothing. I went to my room to pack my bags, and for some reason, Tiffany followed me. As I packed my clothes, cosmetics, and items for my side job in my bag, Tiffany continued to insult me. "You're really stupid. How can you even live with that face? Cosmetics? They must be cheap, right? Why don't you leave them? After all, you're just a woman who's been dumped. It's okay, you can cry or lash out at me, but Dan will protect me. You must be really frustrated, aren't you?" I decided to ignore her completely, not even bothering to respond. Tiffany didn't like that. Acting strong is pointless. "Your parents' home is poor, right? What, single parent? Poor and tasteless like you can't even claim compensation. I pity you. Want this $10 bill?" Tiffany took out a $10 bill from her wallet, but I wasn't interested. Tiffany continued to berate me until I left the house. Fortunately, I had enough money for a taxi to my parents' house. So I took a taxi there, divorce papers in hand. I thought, there's nothing scarier than someone who is blissfully unaware. "And you don't know my other face, Tiffany. I think that was your name? The tough times ahead are yours." I smirked in the taxi. When I explained the situation at home, my parents warmly welcomed me. My father was furious, and my mother cried, "It's so pitiful for a woman. But to drive away someone as capable as you, Dan really has no eye for people. And a mistress in her 20s? What age difference did he plan on marrying? He's not a celebrity." Ridiculous. "It's okay, I have a plan. Soon, it will be Dan and his mistress Tiffany who come begging to me. Don't worry, Dad and Mom, don't look so sad." Later, I learned that Tiffany was holding a shareholders' meeting. So I dressed in a suit and headed to the meeting fully prepared. Tiffany spotted me at the shareholders' meeting and said, "What, that ugly woman dressed up in such a place? Security, throw her out. Don't come back again." Tiffany left the scene. The security guards, who knew me, were flustered. "Don't worry, leave it to me. Thank you for your hard work. Sorry for the trouble." I apologized to the two security guards and entered the meeting hall. Various investors were gathered there. Tiffany appeared and curtly announced that the company was doing well. When it came time for Q&A, I, as the leading shareholder, stood up. You." Tiffany's voice trembled. "Hello, Tiffany. Everyone, please listen. This president, Tiffany, has stolen my husband and pushed me to divorce." A murmur spread among the investors. Panicking, Tiffany grabbed the microphone. "Everything this woman is saying is a lie. Don't believe her. Security, throw her out. Here, I have a copy of the divorce papers with my husband. Moreover, according to an investigation by a detective agency, Tiffany has a terrible habit of going after men, from married men to young men. How about we decide on a resolution for her resignation? Those in favor, please raise your hands." As murmurs spread like waves among the investors, more and more hands went up in agreement. Tiffany watched with a pale face. "Everyone, don't believe this woman." "What are you saying?" shouted one of the investors. "The lady over there, Judy, is a top-notch investor. You're nothing like this trashy female president." Then, dropping the microphone, Tiffany approached me. "What do you mean? Who are you? I've been an investor for nearly 20 years. You and I are not on the same level. Can you even imagine what happens to a president? Who steals someone else's husband? I used to be the leading shareholder of your company, but you're no longer needed." "What? What do you mean?" You stole someone's husband? I can't believe someone like her. That's right. You can't do without us. You're mocking us. You know what? You're being dismissed as president. The investors' jeers can be heard. Tiffany, standing dumbfounded, finally bursts into tears. One by one, investors start leaving the venue, dismissing the whole situation as trivial. Wait. There's nothing scarier than someone who is blissfully unaware. You made defamatory comments without properly investigating the other party. That's a failure as a professional. This will cost your company's reputation. I think your company will go under, but don't take it too hard. It's all because of your own actions. What did you say? Tiffany grabbed my arm, but I shook her off. Maybe you'll be living in debt from now on. But I won't help you even a bit. Do you want this $10 bill? I threw a $10 bill at Tiffany and left the venue. When I got home and told my parents what had happened, they praised me. That's our daughter. Judy has assets worth several millions. Besides, she helps us out, too. She's truly a daughter to be proud of. She's a genius. That's good. Are you going to remarry? With your skills, you must have many suitors, right? But there's also a chance they'd be after my assets. And I'm getting too old for marriage anyway. Plus, I'm done with men. I plan to stay single from now on. Well, that might be a good idea. Later, I heard that Tiffany's company went bankrupt. Apparently, there were unpaid salaries, and it even made the evening news. Former employees were interviewed. The president was a tyrant of a woman. She would point at female employees in the branches and say, "Make her a regular employee." The harassment was really bad. That's why the turnover rate for part-timers was high. And it always affected the rest of the staff. Despite all this, the president's tyranny never stopped. She wouldn't easily let employees quit, and some even cried wanting to leave. If you took a sick day for the flu, she'd deduct 3 days' worth of pay. It was truly the worst. I thought, when the president is like that, the employees suffer. When the leader isn't proper, those below suffer. Maybe it's better that the company went under, freeing the employees. As I sipped my coffee, I watched the news. A few days later, as I expected, my former in-laws came to my house and apologized. Our son has. I'm really sorry. Judy did nothing wrong. It's all our son's fault. We're truly sorry. Judy, we're sorry. That stupid son of ours having an affair. Ridiculous. Judy, we're so sorry. Judy? Dan? And there was Dan, whom I had divorced. Mom, Dad, why are you apologizing to Judy? This stupid son. Having an affair. Judy, you know, she was supporting our living expenses every month. Huh? Dan. You could do that. After you left us in the lurch. Do you realize how much Judy has helped us? Because of you, we're in dire straits now. We have to work at this age. Dan was taken aback. Yes, I never told him about this. His parents had done something he feared, nonchalantly. But I had no intention of going back. Then Dan tried to come closer. I was wrong. Let's remarry. I love only you, not that wicked woman. Tired of his transparent lies, I was fed up. Your ironing is a mess, right? And your cooking tastes bad, right? Ugly, fat, and disgusting, right? Cleaning is not up to the mark, right? After being told all that, you think you can come back? That's I knew from the start that you were cheating. Well done living a double life. If you had me make lunchboxes, and they had lipstick on the chopsticks, and you fed them to Tiffany, there's no greater humiliation than that. Plus, what you said during our marriage and at our divorce is completely messed up. You praised me so much, but when it came to divorce, you started denigrating me. Well, love was long gone, but it was natural that my patience ran out. Don't come back home. Aren't you the ace of the sales department? Support your own parents. Different, I didn't mean. What do you mean different? I thundered on. I have zero trust in you now. If it were a company, you'd be fired. No reliability whatsoever. Yet you dare come crawling back. Do you realize what your parents are feeling listening to this? I've been taking care of your father and mother, but it serves as a good punishment. Take care of your parents yourself. Don't come crawling back. It's disgusting, and aren't you ashamed? How old are you? Going after a woman in her 20s. And what? Just say whatever you want. Are you so high and mighty? Then Tiffany appeared. Tiffany, wait a moment, Dan tried to stop her, but Tiffany barked back. What? You dump me and try to get back with this woman. Look, ugly wife. Because of you, the company went bankrupt. Couldn't pay the employees, and now labor standards? Ah, you seem educated but lacking in social skills, I taunted the mistress. Tiffany's face turned red with anger. What did you say? I've led the company this far. Employees left because of you. Whose fault is that? You're just jealous of my success. Interfering and taking away the company and employees. And now you're trying to take Dan too. Greedy woman. Thief. Good for nothing. The weaker ones bark the most, don't they? What? I stay calm and rile up Tiffany. After all, it was on the news. Who was the one doing terrible things to the employees? Just because you're the president doesn't mean you can say whatever you want without distinguishing right from wrong. That's why employees, even part-timers, leave. Just wait. What? Trying to escape? Even if I'm inside the house, I'm still here. It's not running away, you ugly woman. Tiffany screeches shrilly. Dan and his parents stand there dumbfounded. I come back and hand them a couple of papers. Here, these are the papers for the compensation claim. Make sure to pay it monthly. Well, if the company has collapsed, we'll have to rely on Dan's salary from his sales job. I think you'll be living in poverty from now on, but do your best. And don't come here again. If you do, I'll call the police. Dan's eyes widen. This much money every month. But Judy, we were married. How can you treat me like this, huh? Reduce the amount, please. I'll do anything. I beg you. If you'll do anything, then pay that amount in compensation. You said you'd do anything, right? So, pay up. This is too much. Don't joke. You ugly thing. How can I pay such an amount when the company has folded? It's too vindictive. It's impossible. There's no obligation to pay, and it's tyranny. Dan, you shouldn't listen to such a woman. I don't care if you're an investor or what, you're just a money-grubbing demon. You might as well be a jailer in hell tormenting people. What's all this noise? At that moment, my father appears at the entrance. Apparently, Tiffany's loud commotion made him come to see what was happening. Dan, I'm disappointed in you. Just go home. And don't involve yourself with my daughter anymore. I don't want to call someone as irresponsible as you a relative. And you must be the Mistress Tiffany, right? Marrying at your age after stealing someone's husband. What would your parents think if they heard about it? Just go home. You're probably after my daughter's assets, right? My daughter worked hard to get here. To disregard that effort and say you can't pay compensation? Aren't you adults who understand what you've done? What, old man? You come out and preach when we are talking. I was robbed of everything by this woman. And yet, you're siding with the devil because you're her father. Father, let's call the police. That sounds good. Police. When I suggest it, Dan's parents pale. We'll leave. We'll discipline our son Dan, so please, not the police. Dan, we're leaving. I never thought you were such a foolish man. I thought we could enjoy our retirement without having to exploit our parents. No. This isn't what was supposed to happen. I did nothing wrong. Dan. Pulled away by his father, Dan and his parents leave. Tiffany looks lost, glaring at me, but I'm not afraid. Ugly women have their ways, right, miss? Just go home. Or do you want me to call the police? Ugh. Glaring at me, Tiffany leaves our property and disappears somewhere. I hope she never comes back. Father, thank you. You really helped. It's because of you that your mother and I are okay. It's only natural I do this. By the way, where did you learn about money management? A friend was doing it, and it looked interesting, so I taught myself. I never thought it would come in handy like this. Since then, I haven't been involved with Dan and Tiffany. However, I still hear about them through my investor friends. It turns out that Dan's scandals of seduction and infidelity were discovered by his company. And they scolded him for jeopardizing their trust. He wasn't demoted or fired because the company valued his skills. However, rumors about Dan spread throughout the company. And he ended up having to leave due to isolation. There were talks of him being transferred to the northern branch. And although he was still demanded to pay compensation, it was humiliating for him to have to leave a company where he had contributed so much. Tiffany was in the same boat. Tiffany, burdened with a huge debt, apparently turned to loan sharks. And is now living a life on the run from debt collectors. I thought, a life in decline, truly a downfall. I wonder how they plan to pay the compensation. It's clear they'll probably default. Well, I hope they don't do anything stupid. One evening, a news segment on shady part-time jobs was aired. Hearing about shady part-time jobs disgusts me because ultimately, the people who act as the executors are the ones who get the least money, while those who give the orders take the majority. The executors risk getting caught for just a few hundreds of dollars. I thought, if it were me, I'd invest. I'd diligently save by investing and enjoy watching my stocks increase. After all, it's better to work a part-time job for a few hundreds of dollars than commit a crime for the same amount. Shady jobs are just a waste, a total waste. Speaking of which, these two haven't paid their compensation. It's kind of frustrating if it stays this way. I then had a detective agency check on the current lives of Dan and Tiffany. An unexpected report came back. Dan had apparently picked up a winning lottery ticket, netting him hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yet he was defaulting on compensation. Angered, I hired a lawyer to collect the payments. Perhaps due to the lawyer's effectiveness, Dan started paying compensation the following month. As for Tiffany, She became a mistress to another company president and now seems to have money. I collected from Tiffany using the same method as with Dan. Surprised by the sudden lawyer, Tiffany also started paying compensation the next month. Well, how long their lifestyle will last, I don't know. Because I've sworn to get back at Tiffany. My face is well known among the president's circles. I advised a president who had taken Tiffany as a mistress that Tiffany was involved with loan sharks and being chased, so it would be better to drive her out. 2 days later, Tiffany showed up at my parents' house. You instigated this, didn't you? How could you? I was about to become the president's wife. You lowest of women. Oh, really? What are you talking about? I played dumb, but Tiffany's anger did not subside. I managed to become the president's mistress because of you, and now it's all ruined. I could have had a good life. You tattled, didn't you? On what basis? Please stop making baseless accusations. What? Acting all high and mighty. Do you know what I had to endure to get close to that perverted president? He likes SM, so I had to endure all that. Shall I tell you everything that happened? It was really tough. You're like a vine of a plant. What? Why are you saying that all of a sudden? After all, it's sad that you can't live without relying on others' strength. But really, you liked the SM play, didn't you? That's how you were making a living, right? Such a miserable woman, pitiful, I sympathize. I chuckled deliberately, adding fuel to the fire of Tiffany's anger. Then, Tiffany grabs my shirt front. What do you know about me? My company was interfered with, my position as a mistress was interfered with. And I even resorted to loan sharks. I can't strut around in society anymore. I haven't been sneaking around like you have. Just then, a police car pulls up in front of our house without its siren blaring. Tiffany, who turns around in shock, starts to tremble. Are you Tiffany? There's a matter regarding the under-the-table job. Please come to the police station. I have nothing to do with it. I have nothing to do with it. As Tiffany breaks into tears, a female police officer puts her in the patrol car. And Tiffany is taken away. Since I was there, the police ask me about the situation, and I tell them everything. Was that woman involved in under-the-table jobs? We don't have clear information yet. Thank you for your cooperation. The police leave, and the patrol car drives away without the siren. She probably won't come here again. 2 days later, the noon news reveals that Tiffany was involved in under-the-table jobs. It's scary, isn't it, the under-the-table job incident? It's been happening frequently in Tokyo these days. Do the executors even profit? They only get a few hundreds of dollars, right? It's foolish. I thought, really foolish. After all, the executors only get a few hundreds of dollars. Most of the money goes to the masterminds. I wouldn't want to lead such a life. By the way, Dan's compensation payment is overdue. While I watch the TV in observation, I check my web bank account for deposits. However, there are no recent deposits from Dan. I thought, if he won the lottery, he should pay off the compensation all at once. Can you really win the lottery with a found ticket? It feels strange. I should hire a detective agency again. I hired a detective agency again to investigate Dan. Surprisingly, it turns out that Dan had forged a winning lottery ticket number and received a large sum of money. Obviously, the police are involved. Apparently, Dan had forged a high-value winning number on a lottery ticket he found. Later, the real lottery ticket owner appeared. and the Lottery Association filed a complaint with the police. Basically, Dan had deceived his way to getting several hundreds of thousands of dollars. I thought, what are you doing? If only you had stayed at the company, even if it was difficult. Dan and Tiffany seem to have divorced already, but what a pair. The police investigation seems to be concluded, and Dan's case has come to light. Wow, whether he's smart or stupid. Can you really forge a lottery ticket number that easily? He used to be the ace of the sales department, right? It's the end of the world, isn't it? To have such incidents spread. I thought, really, Dan, what are you doing? Your parents are working hard, and you're trying to make easy money. You know, it's more interesting to earn money through hard work. You were the sales department's ace, yet you didn't realize that it's easy to stray in life. Since then, I've continued to read the newspaper daily for investment purposes. Newspapers provide more convenient information than online news. Through them, I found out about Dan and Tiffany's court case today. Out of curiosity, I went to observe their trial. In Tiffany's trial, although she claimed she became obsessed with money because she grew up in poverty, the prosecution brought up her involvement in under-the-table jobs and firmly labeled it malicious. Tiffany was sentenced to several years in prison. I'm not to blame. Society, which made me do this, is to blame. I'm not guilty. Tiffany's screams did not sway the judge, and her defense's appeal was denied. In Dan's trial, the forgery amount was so large that the prosecution also described it as extremely malicious. Dan's defense seemed troubled. Dan was also sentenced to several years in prison. He just hung his head upon hearing this. This ends my married life completely. I thought to myself that there's no way I could reconsider things with Dan. But going to prison put a real end to my chapter with him. I even think, serve you right. When I get home, my parents come to the entrance. How did it go? Did they both get prison time? I tell them everything I saw from the spectator seat in court. My parents are satisfied. That's divine retribution, isn't it? After all they did to Judy. Such a punishment is only natural. Absolutely. Don't worry about it, Judy. They just ended up where they belong. You're not at fault. Right, I guess this is a closure in my life. I'll live freely from now on. Maybe I'll work at the nearby supermarket. It's said to prevent dementia. Judy is a hard worker. I laugh with my parents over dinner and go to bed. Dan and Tiffany won't be coming out for a while. Now I can finally sleep in peace. Later, Dan and Tiffany were definitely behind bars. Tiffany's claims in prison that I'm not to blame have not been acknowledged. And she seems to be a troublemaker there. You can't close people's mouths, they say, so naturally, this information reached me. I thought, well, they got what they deserved. If they had lived honestly, they could have had their share of happiness. Out of curiosity, I went to visit Tiffany. But I couldn't meet her due to her emotional instability. I also tried to visit Dan, but he had gone mad, and I was also denied visitation. The former in-laws were ordered by the Lottery Association to refund the money. But of course, they didn't have it and had to declare bankruptcy. While I have a face as an investor, I'm also interested in establishing an apparel company, which I did. I finally realized my dream. Now, as a successful female president, I'm sought after for television appearances. I often listen to my subordinates and peers. And with my naturally strong information gathering skills, I anticipate the times, making my brand explosively popular. And in my 40s, I managed to remarry. We agreed not to have children, and he's another apparel company president, making him a good business partner. He accepted my past without any special comments. Thus, I found happiness. Will pass on your grandpa's pigsty to you. After my beloved grandpa passed away, all his inheritance was taken by my parents and my sister. That's when they made that suggestion to me. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I expressed my gratitude and ran out of the house. Weeks later, my destiny began to change due to a man who visited my grandpa's store. Are you Tina? I am Christina, a college student. I lived with my parents, my sister, and my grandpa. I have always had a bad relationship with my parents and sister. It started several years ago when I had just entered middle school. From behind me, as I was tying my shoelaces, I could hear my sister's high-pitched voice. Dad, the pig is escaping. Is that okay? Leave her, she's probably going to Dad's shop anyway. Oh, I see, she's going back to the pigsty, which is where she belongs, huh? Julia, that's really rude. But that store is just like a pigsty. Next to my sister's pink and white sneakers, my worn-out black shoes looked deflated. My sister always got what she wanted. But I had been wearing these shoes I got a long time ago. I couldn't have the fancy shoes like my sister did because my parents wouldn't buy them for me. Gritting my teeth, I felt my parents' and sister's conversation behind me as I ran out of the house. Looking down at my feet as I ran, I held back tears that were about to overflow. Indeed, my feet are thick and short. I understand why I'm called a pig. On the other hand, my sister is thin, has a small face, and cute eyes. It's hard to believe we're from the same parents. Both my parents doted on her. She knew this and mocked me as a pig. My parents would just laugh along with her instead of scolding her. As a high school and college student, as soon as I could work, I planned to earn money and leave that house. After a short run, a shabby little house appeared. I rushed into the store named Anderson Jewelers. Hey, Tina. What's wrong? Hearing my grandpa's relaxed voice, I immediately relaxed. The store was enveloped in an orange glow, with several displays adorned in gold and white. It was completely different from the local candy shop, and certainly not a place a middle schooler would rush into sweaty. Yet, to me, this store was a place of comfort. Did Julia bully you again? Grandpa offered me a towel as I was sweating and furrowed his brows in concern. No, it's fine now. I was out of breath from running, and soon it didn't matter anymore. I remembered the new gemstones Grandpa had talked about before. Hey, the Italian gemstones you mentioned before, where are they? As I leaned in, Grandpa laughed and let me into the back of the shop. He owned this small building, operating a jewelry store on the first floor, and his home office on the second floor. Although Grandpa had lived at my house nearby since he had a fall, he had no intention of closing the shop as he still had regular customers, and opened the shop every morning. Watching Grandpa struggling to open a cabinet with his left hand, I felt a tightness in my chest. Grandpa, is your hand okay? His left hand hadn't moved well since his fall. However, Grandpa just smiled and patted my head. Tina, you're so kind. I loved that slightly rough hand. But by the time I became a college student, Grandpa's health worsened. He needed care. But neither my parents nor my sister took care of him. I had planned to work and move out, But between caregiving and school, I had no time for a job. Grandpa always cared about me, saying, "I'm sorry, go have fun every day." I understood his feelings, but there was no way I could leave him and go out. "When I get better, let's live together, just the two of us." One day when I suggested this, Grandpa looked at me in surprise as he lay in bed, smiled, and shed a tear. At that time, I was seriously considering living just with him, not imagining that he would pass away just 3 months later. The house felt darker, colder, and larger without Grandpa. As I curled up in Grandpa's room crying, my sister scolded me for being noisy. After Grandpa passed away, my parents and sister only talked about the inheritance. "How much will that store sell for?" The jewels could fetch a good price, right? They discussed these things and handled Grandpa's funeral carelessly. Even though I wanted to send him off properly, they wouldn't listen and wouldn't even help with the funeral costs. The inheritance was about $300,000. And the three of them were excitedly discussing how to use it. "Let's buy a car. I wanted that new bag that came out before. I want to go to Hawaii with my friends." I was locked in my room, listening to music through headphones. If I had to listen to those three discussing things with their strained voices any longer, I felt like I might vomit. When I stepped out into the hallway to go to the bathroom and passed my mom, she snorted, "You don't even join the discussions and just lock yourself away. So you don't need any inheritance, right?" Even though she said that, I didn't feel like responding. I didn't care about the inheritance anyway. It infuriated me to think that everything Grandpa left behind was being taken away. But I didn't want to talk to those people who could discuss such things so gleefully. It must have been around the time my parents and sister had roughly decided how to divide the inheritance. The three of them saw me in the living room and laughed. "We'll pass on your grandpa's pigsty to you," they said. At first, I didn't understand what they meant. But gradually I realized they were talking about Grandpa's shop, and I gasped. My heart was pounding. Can I really have the shop? It's only natural to give the pigsty to the pig, isn't it? I didn't hear my sister's mocking voice. "Thank you." That was all I shouted before I hurriedly ran out of the house. Before leaving, I thought I saw their stunned faces, but I didn't care anymore. Since I started caring for Grandpa, I only visited the shop occasionally for cleaning, and hadn't opened it. After Grandpa passed away, I had almost forgotten about the shop. Grandpa's cherished shop, filled with memories. I rushed to the shop for the first time in a while. It was a bit dustier than before. The building was old, and it no longer had any real estate value. Still, I started cleaning up the shop with enthusiasm. In his later years, Grandpa had sold off the precious metals, and there were only a few small gems left in the shop. My parents and sister must have thought these and the building itself weren't worth much, which is why they gave them to me. That was fine with me. I didn't care about the asset value. Having this shop here was what mattered to me. I sat in the chair Grandpa always used, looked around the shop, and took in the smell that Grandpa always had in this place. For the first time in a long while, I smiled. Then, I decided to live on the second floor of that building. It was where Grandpa had lived originally. It had a kitchen and a bathroom, although it was cramped for one person. But living there was much more comforting than being in the house with such parents and a sister. A few days after I started living and sleeping on the second floor of the shop while cleaning inside, I noticed someone peeking into the store, so I opened the door. I'm sorry, we're not open. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The person peeking in was a man of early old age, scratching his white flecked hair and looking embarrassed. I apologize for the intrusion. Actually, I knew the owner of this shop. My grandpa passed away a few months ago. Oh, I'm aware of that. I'm here for you. The man introduced himself as Douglas. He showed me a photo of my young grandpa with Douglas. Are you Tina? Hearing that, I remembered how Grandpa used to call me Tina. Not wanting him to notice that I had figured it out, I bit my lip and nodded. Just like Mr. Anderson said, you look like a really nice granddaughter for him. Douglas was a gemologist, and not only were they business associates, but they also went drinking and shared information. I learned a lot about gems from Mr. Anderson. I owe him a lot. And he asked me to do one last thing for him before he passed. After I offered a seat and some coffee, Douglas carefully took a box out of his bag. When he opened the sturdy case, inside was a beautifully cut large diamond shining brilliantly. What a beautiful diamond! I was totally captivated by how it sparkled. What is this exactly? When I asked Douglas, he smiled kindly, his wrinkles at the corners of his eyes reminding me somewhat of Grandpa. This is a diamond worth over $1 million. Mr. Anderson left it for you. I involuntarily gaped. Grandpa did? Yes, Mr. Anderson was worried that if he left it in cash, it would surely be taken by your parents and sister. Hearing that, I stared at the diamond in disbelief. Grandpa had always cared for me. I had never imagined he would go to such lengths. Please sell it before your parents find out about this. That's why Mr. Anderson left it for you. I gently received the offered case and hugged it. Hearing it was something Grandpa left, I felt a strong reluctance to part with it. However, I was indeed in dire need of money, and I thought that Grandpa must have been worried about me, so it seemed best to sell it quickly. Grandpa might have even realized that I would not receive any inheritance from my family. It was just then. A car stopped in front of the shop and honked softly. Looking out, I saw my parents and sister peering at me from a small, bright red car. When I stepped outside, they rolled down the window, looking like celebrities abroad with designer bags and sunglasses. Ah, the pig has come out. My sister laughed in a high-pitched voice. It had been just under 2 weeks since I had left home. Yet they seemed to be living extravagantly. We're going to buy a luxury bag. There's still some inheritance left. My sister smiled happily. That shop looks even dirtier now that I see it. Really? Julia, won't you catch poverty from talking to such people? I watched their reaction as if they were strangers. Their gaze then turned towards Douglas standing next to me. Seeing the unfamiliar old man, their expressions turned suspicious. Nice to meet you. I am a gemologist. I used to work with Mr. Anderson at the shop. The three of them vaguely nodded to such a greeting. Then, as if struck by a thought, my dad got out of the car. You're a gemologist, then? You know the price of the precious metals left here? Approaching with an arrogant attitude, Douglas smiled. Yes, of course. Hearing this, my dad entered the shop. Wait, Dad. I tried to stop him, but my dad, mom, and sister all came into the shop. Wow, it's so run down. It smells dusty. While complaining, they began to look through the few gems left in the shop. Which are the expensive ones? Let's take them. Hearing that, I glanced at the desk. The diamond Douglas had brought was still there. Yes, the gem you just showed seems to be quite valuable, especially popular among collectors. As I listened to Douglas speak, my parents approached. If I quickly hid the diamond, they might suspect something. But I didn't want these people to take what Grandpa had left for me. As I was pondering, my mom's shrill voice echoed. "What about this diamond on the desk?" I felt all blood drain from my face. Unable to do anything, I stood frozen. "That's a fake diamond. It's not of great quality, so it won't fetch much. This one here might be worth millions, depending on the piece." Douglas quickly diverted my mom's attention to another gem. "It might be worth millions. Wow, let's sell this and buy an even better bag." Hearing the price, my mom and sister began to rejoice. After staring at the diamond Grandpa left on the desk, my dad turned to me. "I'll give you this diamond. It's perfect for someone like you, isn't it? Pearls before swine, huh?" "Julia, stop it." As I listened to my parents' and sister's conversation in a daze, I watched Douglas. He nodded slightly towards me while explaining to my dad about a small gem in the showcase. I picked up the diamond case from the desk and hugged it gently. Afterward, my parents and sister took only the gems Douglas said were valuable and left the store. When I thanked Douglas, he just smiled and said no. "That diamond shows how much Mr. Anderson cares about you. It's worth a lot more than just money." I couldn't let them have it. I hesitated for a moment but ultimately decided to follow my grandpa's wishes and convert the gem into cash. With that money, I decided to renovate the shop and rent it out. Now, another jeweler rents it, and the shop is regaining its former liveliness. It feels like the small but beautiful shop Grandpa had is coming back, and I am happy. As for me, I decided to move to Italy using the money Grandpa left me. I've always loved Italy, and since Grandpa studied gemology there, I wanted to live there at least once. Right after I arrived in Italy, I received a call from my parents. When I answered, I heard my dad's shrill voice. "Who's that phony gemologist? He totally scammed us." "What happened?" "That gem didn't fetch a good price at all. He said it was worth millions. So we even bought a new car." "A car, not the luxury car you bought before?" "We bought another one. And now, this is a huge loss." I could hear my sister's angry voice and someone else in the background, suggesting they were calling from the place they had the gems appraised. Sighing, I spoke up. "The gemologist only said this type of gem could be worth hundreds of thousands depending on the piece. He never said that gem was worth hundreds of thousands. The real valuable item was the diamond on the desk. The one Julia called pearls before swine." "What?" As I listened to my dad's voice, my anger from the past surged. "That was something precious Grandpa gave me. You all who made fun of Grandpa and me don't really deserve it. You don't even know its real value. Pitiful, really. That's truly pearls before swine. Do you understand the meaning of the phrase?" As I ranted rapidly, my dad, surprised by my verbosity, fell silent. That gem was actually worth over $1 million. "I'm in Italy now. I'm going to live here. Don't call me anymore." $1 million. It was that valuable. "Wait, what? What do you mean $1 million? Hey, how are you going to handle the payments? We've run out of inheritance." Though I could hear the chaos on the other end of the phone, I hung up. I resolved never to answer their calls again and set my phone to block their numbers. Later, I heard that my parents and sister had a hard time. Having spent all the inheritance, they couldn't make payments and had to sell the new car and designer bags, returning not just to their former lifestyle but to an even poorer one. I started working at a jewelry shop in Italy. Strangely, I found myself approached by various men. I became close with a regular customer of the shop, and later, we married. Now, I'm known as Madame Porco and I'm doing really well for myself. I am Hillary. I'm a 23-year-old in my first year in the workforce. I grew up in an ordinary family with my parents and two elder sisters born a year apart. However, life changed drastically when my mother passed away due to an illness during my school years. Originally carefree, my father started to drink daily and rarely came home. Moreover, despite it being shortly after my mother's death, he quickly found a new girlfriend and paid little attention to us sisters. My mother was a homemaker, so my father never helped around the house. Therefore, my sisters and I, who usually helped our mother, had to share all the household chores. And my eldest sister even quit her club activities to manage our home. My sisters and I were all close in age and got along well. Whenever I cried missing our mother, my sisters would embrace me and we encouraged each other to become respectable individuals for our mother's sake. Even after going to college, my sisters cared for me and continued to live at our family home. I think, in the absence of our mother, we all wanted to cherish our family time even more. Despite my father living as he pleased, we didn't mind that and enjoyed shopping and dining out together. However, our peaceful days were abruptly disrupted. Out of the blue, my father said he was remarrying and brought a woman home. Nice to meet you, I'm Kelly. I'm much younger than your mother was. Well, I'm going to remarry your father, but I don't intend to become your mother. So please don't call me that. That was her introduction. Kelly, the woman he intended to remarry, was only 20 years older than me. She seemed proud of her beauty, perhaps due to her attention to aesthetics. Kelly acted sweetly around my father, but showed her true colors when with us. Once, she even tried to dispose of our mother's mementos, which led to a huge fight with my sisters. I'm his wife now, why should I care about keeping his ex-wife's stuff? I'm going to throw all of this away, so hand them over. Kelly, these are our mother's mementos. They may not mean anything to you, but to us, they are irreplaceable memories. Please, don't throw them away. But your father said it's okay to throw everything away. How long will you keep dragging your mother along? I am your mother now, you should care about me. While claiming she didn't want to be our mother, Kelly only acted motherly when it suited her. Concerned about her disposing of the mementos, my sisters and I pooled our part-time job money to rent a storage unit to keep them safe. Honestly, I still wished we could live surrounded by our mother's belongings. Thus, we were forced to lead a life nervously without being able to be immersed in the memories of our mother. What complicated our feelings the most was our father squandering money on Kelly. He was an elite with a high income, which he often boasted about. Although I don't know the details, he seemed to earn hundreds of thousands annually. And Kelly, having caught wind of this, demanded unbelievably various expensive items. She constantly upgraded to the latest smartphones and accumulated luxury sports cars, clothes, and shoes from high brands. It made me want to ask if she ever used her own money. After marrying, Kelly quit her job and seemed to be dependent by nature. Moreover, while my father lavishly spent money on Kelly, he was stingy with our living expenses. Although he would give us money when asked, he would immediately add, "Can't you manage on your own?" This forced us to juggle multiple jobs to cover our expenses, and we vowed to leave this house and live freely someday. Finally, my sisters saved enough money to rent an apartment, and I moved in with them. Honestly, even my newly employed sisters didn't have much financial leeway. But we had reached our limit with my father and Kelly's actions, thinking it better to leave to preserve our memories with our mother. When it was time to move, I told Kelly since my father was away on a business trip. "Kelly, we've rented an apartment and will be moving out. Thank you for everything. Are you finally moving out? It's about time. I have been wondering what you guys are thinking. Because you and your sisters keep staying in your father's house even though he's newly married. It's embarrassing, living at home at your age. They call that grown women in children's rooms. Kelly, we're not old enough to be grown women in children's rooms. As my sisters say, we've had enough of having our mother's memories tarnished. Well, to you she was your mother, but to me, she's a stranger. By the way, is your new place just a tiny one-room studio? Living in such a cramped space with 3 women must be tough. It's too cramped. And you'll just end up fighting. Don't come back here, okay? Actually, it's not a one-room studio. We get along well and will support each other in our new life. Don't worry. I'm not worried at all. When you move out, make sure to take all your belongings. Since you 3 sisters used 1 room each, my room was cramped and I hated it. I'm going to use the spare room for my branded goods. So, don't come back here during holidays or any time, okay? You'll probably get married someday anyway, so it's fine, right? Why can't I come back to my own home? No matter what. Kelly, you don't have the right to decide that. We may want to come back and talk about our mother sometimes. We don't intend to interfere with you and my father's life. But we hope you can understand our feelings. No, I don't care about that. The house is getting old anyway, and I wanted to remodel it. Maybe we'll demolish it and have your father build a new mansion. Well, I'm his wife now, so don't meddle in what I do. Exasperated by Kelly's arrogance, my sisters took all our mother's mementos to their new home. We sometimes missed the home we shared with our mother. To be sure, but we could find peace of mind. In our new apartment, we filled it with pictures of our mother and celebrated her birthday with cakes and special meals. Though our father was absent, it felt as if he had never been there. And we enjoyed our time. However, shortly thereafter, I received a shocking call from Kelly. That day, after a tiring day at my new job, I came home exhausted. Suddenly, I noticed my smartphone was ringing. Kelly's name was displayed on the screen. My sisters had cut off all contact with Kelly, so I was the only one she could reach. Although I was tired and really didn't want to, I pressed the call button. And she told me something unbelievable. "Hillary, something terrible has happened. Your father was in an accident and has passed away." "What? Your father had an accident?" "I just got a call from the police. And they said if he has children, they should come immediately, so bring your sisters." I got it. I was shaken, but so was Kelly. After ending the call, I explained the situation to my worried sisters, and we rushed to the hospital. According to what I heard, my father had an accident while on a business trip with colleagues and didn't make it back. The others were safe but hospitalized with serious injuries, unable to attend his funeral. While still in shock, my sisters and I continued to thank everyone who attended the funeral. Kelly was clearly faking her tears, exaggerating her crying. She kept saying how much she loved my father and how she wanted children. How at only 43, she was now left alone, her lies were endless. We were so stunned that we couldn't even argue back, and before we knew it, the funeral was over. With our father gone, there was no reason for us to see Kelly anymore. If she continued to live in our family home, it was a pity and it would be inevitable to let her have it, said my eldest sister. However, the day after the funeral, Kelly called us again and said something outrageous. From today, the house and all the assets are mine. You've already rented an apartment and moved out. And I have no intention of giving you a single penny of your father's inheritance. You're all grown up now, and you can live on your own salaries, right? I can't work. So I'll be taking the life insurance and inheritance as my living expenses. We were speechless at Kelly's absurd statement. But there was no way we could accept such terms. No, it was impossible. Please wait a moment. I understand that the sudden loss of our father is confusing for you, Kelly. But we feel the same way. There has been a gap between us since our mother died. But we never hated our father. Even though we moved out, this house is filled with our family memories. Regarding the inheritance and life insurance, we're not asking for a fortune, but as his daughters, we surely have a right to receive something. What? Playing the daughter card now? If you want the inheritance, just say it. But as I said just now, I have no intention of giving you a penny. What happens to this house is up to me, and I can remarry and live with someone else if I want. I still don't know how much the inheritance will be. But your father was an elite and had good insurance. Kelly, is there someone else you're seeing now? Is that true? Well, who knows? But I'm the type who's popular with men. Now that I'm a widow, men won't leave me alone. But I don't have children. And it doesn't matter to you guys if I remarry to distract myself from loneliness. We are strangers, after all. I see. I understand your thoughts, Kelly. Please do as you wish. Good, if you understand. Now get out, all of you. I'm busy because I need to talk to the insurance company. Realizing that no further words would change Kelly's mind, we decided to leave our family home without looking back. There were no more memories there. I decided with my sisters to keep all past memories in our hearts and find new happiness for ourselves. Of course, receiving the inheritance would make our lives somewhat easier, but we weren't desperately seeking money. And honestly didn't want any more to do with Kelly. A week later, after the tumultuous days passed, we returned to our routine lives. Each of us went to work, worked hard all day, and at night, we cooked and discussed the day's events. That day, after dinner and enjoying cake with my sisters, Kelly called again. What could it be this time? I would have preferred to ignore such calls. But considering it might be about our Father's Month memorial, I answered. Hello? Oh, Hillary? I need help. I refuse. Don't abandon me so suddenly. Actually, the person who was with your father during the accident turned out to have been his affair partner. Besides, the woman was also married. So her husband got angry and contacted me. I said I'm unrelated as the second wife. But the affair partner was neglecting household and childcare duties for work. and the husband had been working hard at home. So, the lawyer said I should show some sincerity. In that case, why don't you show the sincerity he is asking for? Considering the husband's feelings, it's only natural. That's not all. My affair was also discovered, and the wife is demanding apologies from me. In fact, it turned out your father had been spending a lot while he was alive. And when we opened the accounts, there was hardly any savings or inheritance left. I thought I'd be able to live comfortably with the inheritance and insurance. Also, my affair partner had promised to divorce his wife and remarry me. But as soon as she scolded him, he decided to break up with me. Can you believe it? What I can't believe is that you still think you're right, Kelly. My father was at fault too. But logically, each of the affair partner's wife and husband must be deeply hurt. You really should find a way to show some sincerity. Then you and your sisters should help me. I have other debts. And I might have to sell this house. Then I'll have nowhere to live. And won't be able to maintain my current lifestyle. If that's the case, why not sell your luxury cars and designer goods and get a job? Since you've lived off other people's money for so long, you probably don't realize that the value and importance of luxury items come from purchasing them with your own money. It's absurd that after committing adultery, which deviates from moral conduct, you play the victim when the affair partner repents and returns to his wife. Also, we are strangers, and you are not our mother, Kelly. We have no obligation to help you. Hillary, I'm really sorry for everything. I've been wrong as your mother. I've taken the long way around, but I'll try to become a good mother now. So please help me. I refuse. It's all your own doing, Kelly. Besides, building a good relationship with a stepmother who would casually throw away our real mother's mementos is impossible. For my sisters and me, I sympathize with your situation. But that's the responsibility of a spouse, right? We are living our new lives and have no intention of seeing you. Don't say that. I don't want to let go of my designer goods, luxury cars, or this house. You girls are the only ones I can rely on. You can even call me Mom. I have no intention of calling you that. We are strangers. I understand you're busy, Kelly, so we'll take care of our Father's Month memorial. Goodbye. After that, Kelly was repeatedly contacted by each of the affair partner's family and had to deal with a lot of complicated matters. Particularly, her affair partner's wife exploded in rage when she found out the affair, since she was pregnant with their third child, had been managing on her own, believing in her husband's busy schedule. Meanwhile, Kelly could not continue to lead a life extravagantly since she never tried to work. Soon, she had to sell all the designer goods and luxury cars she had bought with my father's money. She clung to city officers in tears, but he dismissed her with, "If life is that hard, please get a job." When she applied for social welfare, they introduced her to a job center with a straight face. She now quietly lives in a 40-year-old apartment, paying rent she can afford with her salary from part-time jobs. Meanwhile, the family home that Kelly had to let go was reclaimed by my eldest sister. She got engaged and decided to live there with her fiancé after renovating it. This has given us a place to talk about family memories again, and I'm thrilled. I've also started dating someone I met through work and am savoring my new life every day. If we don't protect ourselves, who will? Right. After all, you girls would just get married and leave once you find someone good. Wouldn't you? the parents said in unison, casting doubtful glances at us. Tears welled up in our mother's eyes, and our father was angry. Despite their rush to secure promises, I wished they'd trust their children more. My name is Allison. I'm a 30-year-old freelancer working from home on my computer. I live with my parents and my sister, Mandy. Ouch, ouch. My back has been hurting so much lately. It's unbearable. My father complained, dramatically exaggerating his pain. Are you okay, Dad? Please don't push yourself too hard. My mother responded equally dramatically, as she conspicuously rubbed his aching back. Both of my parents are still only 65 and haven't had any significant health issues until now. However, they've been showing us how bad their condition is, which made us worried. Actually, both of my parents are excessively anxious about their old age. They think that since we sisters are girls, we'll eventually marry and leave home, unable to care for them in their later years. But in reality, neither I at 30 nor Mandy at 28 have any marriage plans or boyfriends yet. As my mother continued to vigorously rub my father's back, her voice filled with concern. Standing before such parents, I felt compelled to say something. If it hurts that much, why not visit the hospital? I've heard of cases where people went to orthopedics for back pain and found nothing, only to discover an illness at the internist. What? My parents looked at me seriously, both latching on to my words. I reassured them it was just something I'd heard, adding, well, just to be safe. If it's really that painful, seeing a doctor might be a good idea. Instantly, my father asked, would you come with us? Considering our mother was there too, I declined to avoid crowding the waiting area at the hospital. They both looked disappointed and muttered, I see. Later, before my sister who had just returned home, my parents performed a skit where my mother now exaggerated her back pain, and my father dramatically took care of her. Watching from afar, Mandy looked at our parents with a bit of a fed-up expression, reacting almost the same way I did. But when it came to accompanying them to the hospital, she casually agreed. That's fine. Which delighted our parents so much that they practically jumped for joy. At dinner that night, Mandy's steak was noticeably bigger, clearly a reward for agreeing to go with them. A few days later, as Mandy was driving our parents to the hospital, in her flashy red convertible, our slightly embarrassed parents announced their destination to the neighbors. Watching from inside the house, I couldn't help but chuckle a bit, but I prayed for their tests to go smoothly. According to Mandy, who returned later, both of our parents' backs were fine and healthy. Peeking into the refrigerator while listening to her, I found some cake and asked my mother if I could have some. That's for Mandy. She accompanied us to the hospital, unlike you, Allison. What? All 4 cakes were rewards for my sister. It was clear to see the seriousness and intentions of our parents. Since then, our parents have continued testing which of us would care for them by complaining of headaches or stomach aches. As I often work from home and have a flexible schedule outside deadlines, I ended up doing much of the caretaking. I made porridge, prepared clothes, and felt almost like a caregiver. Meanwhile, Mandy, who prefers going out, prioritized her plans without much worry. It seemed I won this round, as I alone received lavish meals and rewards for a while. Our parents also began dealing with end-of-life matters such as wills, asset distribution, and taxes. In all of this, it was blatantly obvious. They were comparing how much each of us helped. As I was more familiar with computers and often at home, I had an advantage. But Elle didn't intend to outshine Mandy or try to win favor with our parents. I simply happened to be home more often. However, they began to look at me with expectant eyes. One day, Mandy approached me seriously. "Don't you think Mom and Dad have been acting strange lately? One minute they're in pain, the next they're in a good mood. Then they treat us coldly. Could it be some type of dementia?" I laughed off my sister's concern and said, "Maybe Dad and Mom are just worried about their old age? Neither of us is Mary. And they might be trying to figure out who would take care of them." Relieved that it wasn't dementia, Mandy sighed and said, "Taking care of them isn't just one person's responsibility, right? I don't plan on leaving it all to you." I was pleased with her sensible response. Exactly. Even if we both get married, we should cooperate. I wish they'd trust us more. But maybe they can't help but worry since we're both girls, I replied, realizing our parents had been overly anxious about being left alone by their two daughters. However, if something were to happen to our parents, Mandy and I would naturally be there to help. I hoped they would worry less about their old age and enjoy their lives now while they still could. After our parents saw that we noticed their odd behaviors, they kept quiet for a while. Then one night, while Mandy was away on a trip with friends, our parents called me to the living room and dropped a bombshell. "We've built a new house. We thought, how about it for you?" Confused by his abrupt mention of a new house, I prompted him to continue. "You don't have a boyfriend and aren't working in an office. So it seems unlikely you'll meet someone. The chances of you getting married are pretty low, right? That's why we want to entrust you with taking care of our parents in our old age." My father explained rather bluntly. It appeared they had assessed and compared Mandy and me, concluding that I, being older and more plain, seemed less likely to marry. They believed I was more obedient and better suited for caregiving. "Mandy is still in her 20s, right? Unlike you, she seems more likely to find someone. If you were the oldest son, taking care of us in old age would be impossible, wouldn't it? Basically, even if I meet someone I love and get married in the future, the condition is that my parents would come with me." They weighed which daughter would take care of them in their old age and chose me. They intended to secure care before either of us could marry and leave, buying a house in the suburbs as a means to ensure this commitment. Regardless of what happened next, the house was supposed to be their security, in return for our promise to look after them. Listening to my parents' plan, I honestly felt a discomfort as if my fate had been decided for me. As I listened to my father's words in shock, I looked at my mother's face. And she, with a beaming smile, said, "Isn't that a great idea? What about this house? We're selling it to my brother's son. It's an old house, but well located. When we said we were letting it go, he wanted it, so we decided to do that." My father continued, having moved forward with these plans on the assumption I would agree. However, this would likely not sit well with Mandy. My father casually added, "It can't be helped. In these times, we must carefully decide which daughter will take our future. Mandy likes to go out. Allison, on the other hand, seems capable of staying in and providing care." My father smirked, and Mother chimed in. "We'll tell Mandy to find a new place to move into tomorrow. Allison, if you could start studying caregiving soon, we'd be happy. If they're worried about their old age, they could just talk to me honestly. But to secretly weigh their options and cast one of us aside like that. Their fears of aging, they chose to manipulate and decide unilaterally who would be discarded." The next day, after hearing about this from my mother, Mandy confronted our parents. I get it. I'm supposed to leave. But I can't understand how you can so easily dispose of the house we were born and raised in. Mandy accepted that she had been weighed and cast aside. She also felt indignation at our parents' decision to sell the familiar home. My father responded as if it were a matter of course. Indeed, it is the house you grew up in. But for the sake of our peaceful old age, it's necessary. My father, determined to secure a comfortable future for themselves, seemed willing to sacrifice anything for it. I wondered if that might even include Mandy, his own daughter. This approach by my parents felt excessive to me. Eventually, Mandy left home without much further discussion, resigned to the situation. Urged by our parents, I moved into the new house, while they stayed behind to finalize the sale of the old home before planning to move in with me. During this time, unexpected news arrived. Mandy was getting married. Her fiancé, the same age as her and apparently a highly accomplished guy, who became a manager at a young age. Furthermore, his parents already lived with their eldest son, meaning he wasn't the heir, which suddenly changed our parents' outlook. Rushed family introductions and wedding plans ensued. Her fiancé, despite his achievements, was a rare kind of decent young man who didn't boast about his success. After several discussions about the marriage, our parents grew quite fond of Mandy's fiancé. Living in the new house, I was unaware of these changes until Mandy called to inform me. She clearly thought that siding with her and her fiancé and living together would be more secure and beneficial for their future. By that time, I was already feeling overwhelmed living in the new house. One day, I went to visit my parents to talk. Before I could start, they hesitantly spoke up. Mandy's fiancé, he's really a good man. I could fall for him myself. He's sincere and cheerful, a truly good young man, my father said, praising Mandy's fiancé excessively. Then glanced at my mother with some difficulty. That's why, sorry, but we've decided to entrust our old age to Mandy and her husband. We initially thought of you, but a big company's director seems more reliable. I understood what my mother was trying to say, but decided to hear her out completely. So, we're giving the house to Mandy. Can you move out by tomorrow? So that was it. For my parents, the new house was a card to play for their secure old age. It's natural they'd want to take it back. But, Mom, didn't you hear? I've already demolished that house. My parents looked shocked and were speechless for a while, gaping at me. What did you just say? I demolished it. That house was a defective building. Both parents seemed unable to believe my words, their eyes darting around. I thought about discussing it with you. But with all the talk about Mandy's wedding, you wouldn't listen, would you? I had moved to the new house earlier and soon noticed something was off. Walking around inside, I felt the floors were uneven, and cracks appeared in the walls. Initially, it wasn't much of a concern, but the condition of the house worsened over time. Eventually, leaks became severe, and even minor rainfall led to flooding. I went to discuss it with my parents, but they were too caught up in Mandy's wedding news. So I missed the chance to inform them on time. But I told Mandy about it. She said she'd talk to you, so I thought you knew. I hadn't been able to tell my parents about the house's issues, so I informed Mandy. She was supposed to relay the message, but it seems she hadn't. Then, a couple of days ago, a demolition crew suddenly showed up and said they were tearing down the house, so I moved out. My revelation led to more questions from my parents. You moved out, where to? You haven't come back here, have you? My mother asked, puzzled. I sheepishly responded. To his place. He suggested we live together. It looks like I might be getting married. My parents were doubly surprised and exclaimed, "What?" Just then, Mandy returned home, saw me, and casually asked, "How's the demolition going?" Her question triggered my parents. Wait a minute. What do you mean by demolishing the house? I paid for that house. How could you do something like this without consulting me? Mandy calmly replied to our father. Well, that house was defective, right? It was leaning badly, there were leaks. And the critical pillars were damaged. I consulted him. And he said the interior work was shoddy. At Mandy's words, my father became flustered. No. I didn't skimp on purpose, but I did say to cut corners on unnecessary things. My mother glared at him sharply. Maybe. That's why the construction company did a sloppy job. When I tried to contact them about the defects, their phone was already disconnected. Besides, the house was in our names, right? So we could decide to demolish it. It's useless to keep it if it's uninhabitable. My parents were deeply bowed by Mandy's straightforward reasoning. Perhaps Mandy had hastily decided on the demolition partly as retaliation for being disregarded by our parents. Actually, we wanted Mandy to look after us in our old age. We were going to give the house to you too, but caught in their schemes, my parents couldn't argue much with Mandy, who had decided on the demolition. My father continued, and Mandy cheerfully replied, "Don't worry. We don't need a house in such an inconvenient location." Mandy suggested if the house was to be given, they might as well sell the demolished land and convert it into cash. After her marriage, she ignored the promise to care for our parents and lived in an urban condo. Soon after, her husband was transferred abroad, and they moved overseas abruptly. Our childhood home, having received a deposit, couldn't be said unsellable, and was duly passed on to a relative as planned. Mandy kept the money from the sale of the land, and the promise to take care of our parents became dubious. Eventually, they ended up living in a small condo by themselves. As for me, I was shocked to discover a fact about my longtime friend, whom I was about to marry. He was unexpectedly an heir. He knew the whole story of how I received the new house from my parents, and had agreed to take care of my parents' future. His parents had passed away, and he was the second son. Still, my parents, unable to immediately jump at this new situation, decided to live away from both daughters. I never thought marrying would sever ties with my parents. I was ready to rush to their side if needed. My husband knew this, and I believe my sister felt the same, even overseas. Our parents, unable to trust us fully, had tried to secure their future through visible means, which backfired. I plan to live life to the fullest now, without worrying too much about the future, hoping to set an example for my parents. I'm going to live with my parents since I have a kid. You, being broke, should leave. My brother shouted this out loud, and both our parents nodded as if to say exactly. Despite having been forced back to my parents' house, and continuously providing for living expenses while caring for my mom, it seems I'm easily written off. I'm Felicity, and I think my parents named me that because they wanted me to be cheerful as I grew up. However, since learning at 15 that my dad's ex was named Felicity, I've held doubts about the origin of my name. Knowing about my parents' embarrassing past is something a child would rather not know. And honestly, I wasn't very cherished during my childhood. My brother Mike, who is 3 years older, is smart and charming. Since both our parents wanted a boy, they cherished Mike, born as their first child, a boy. Apparently, our grandparents believed that the first child must be a boy. Under immense pressure, my mom successfully gave birth to a son and adored him more than anyone else. What about me, you ask? I wore Mike's hand-me-downs. The money from our grandparents had a clear disparity, and naturally, when relatives invited us out, it was always Mike. Normally, one might say, be patient because he's your older brother, but I was raised distinctly, being taught to step back and let the boys stand out due to some bizarre notion of ladylike behavior. In reality, I experienced treatment far less favorable, not just by a step, but by miles. However, my saving grace has always been my carefree nature. My parents used to say, "You never think about anything." But had I pondered too deeply, I'd probably have become a gloomy child, full of resentment towards my brother. He's him, and I'm me, and that's just fine. By embracing this quirky family dynamic, I've come to disregard my parents' attitudes. Despite the favoritism towards my brother, I still felt gratitude for being raised by my parents, and though my brother, who had a mean streak as a child, was part of my family, I never truly hated him. That sentiment wavered due to an incident when I was in my late 20s. My dad retired, and my mom, a homemaker, fell ill, leading to paralysis in her legs, necessitating full-time care. I had thought that with my dad retired, he would be by her side, providing peace of mind, but this was a naive thought. "Hey Felicity, I can't do anything, so come back home." What? No way, if I move back home, I won't be able to commute to work. Instead of saying you can't do anything, try studying or practicing a bit. What's with that tone, talking to your dad like that? Just quit your job and come back. Your mom's important to you, right? It's not that simple. With my dad being so controlling, my mom was left to sort out everything he needed. Now that she was incapacitated, he turned into a helpless man unable to do even household chores or care for her. He intended for me to return home and take her place. Since my brother worked closer to home, it would have made sense for him to help. But in times like these, why call on me, whom they had never cherished much? I had been living freely since moving out, determined not to be dominated by them. But then my dad began calling my company. This interference became a nuisance at work, drawing annoyed looks from my boss and colleagues. I loved my job, which I had worked so hard to get, and wanted to continue at all costs. However, driven nearly to neurosis by my dad's relentless calls, I couldn't perform my duties and reluctantly quit to return home. However, the family home was in a dreadful state. My retired dad, having nothing else to do, took up horse racing as a hobby and spent his entire pension on it as soon as it was disbursed. His drinking increased, often staying up drinking until dawn, with empty beer cans and wine bottles littered around the table. I had heard there was some savings for retirement, but barely a year into his retirement, the household finances were in shambles. No wonder he mumbled and hesitated when I suggested, aside from housework, you could hire a professional helper for caregiving, right? With utility bills in arrears until the pension came in, it was a cycle of immediate expenses. Even when the pension came in, it vanished instantly. Reluctantly, I started using my savings to stabilize our living conditions. and even renovated the house to be wheelchair accessible for my mom. Later, I found a job near my parents' home, entrusted my mom to daytime care services, and used my earnings, about $2,000 monthly, for caregiving and living expenses. My bank account, which I had been saving since my early working days, was now completely drained. No matter how much I worked, the outgoing expenses were too high. Yet, my dad neither worked nor managed finances. Increasingly relying on me, it was as if I had become his host. My daily life, filled with household chores in the morning, work during the day, and caregiving at night, was reaching its limit. I really wanted to place my mom in a care facility and leave my worthless dad behind, so I could use the entire sum being consumed for his sake on my own savings and living expenses. However, despite not doing anything himself, my dad vehemently opposed the idea of putting my mom in a care facility. My mom herself wondered, "Why should I go to a facility when you are taking care of me?" And thus, I couldn't get her agreement. I tried discussing it with Mike, but as expected, he didn't care, and it seemed inevitable that I would be the one to sacrifice. That's how I ended up trapped in a prison called home. It was about 3 years into this hellish cohabitation when suddenly Mike announced, post facto, that he had registered his marriage because my girlfriend is pregnant. And he came home with his wife Sandra, whom I had never met before. I was looking forward to meeting Mike's sister, but you're nothing like him. Not cute at all. Sandra laughed the moment she saw me, an insult that naturally disgusted me. Despite being her first visit, Sandra walked around the house as if she owned it, barged into my room to use my cosmetics like testers, and said, "I like this, give it to me." She even rummaged through the drawers where my mom's jewelry was stored, muttering ominous things like, "How much does 18-karat gold sell for these days?" She seemed like a dangerous woman. Definitely not a good woman. I thought it would be better to cut ties with her, even though they were already registered as married. However, all my dad and mom could think about was wanting to hold a grandchild, or wanting to name it. Their heads were filled only with thoughts of the upcoming grandchild, which I even found enviable in its carefree nature. I was a little scared of becoming related to this sister-in-law, and my bad premonition came true that very day. "But I'm so nervous about raising my first child, can someone help me?" Sandra said in a sugary voice, twirling her hair around her finger. Then my dad, who had been ogling Sandra's chest, stretched his lips and said, "Then why don't you live with us?" "Really, Dad?" "Of course." While my parents and Mike and his wife got excited about living together, I couldn't help but ask, "Isn't there not enough room? What are you going to do? You should just leave." "What?" Stunned by my dad's words, my mom also smiled and added, "Yes, that's a good idea. Act quickly, get out fast." Despite feeling like I had been very filial, it was shocking how quickly my parents turned their backs on me. Wait. Even if I'm driven out of the house now, I've been paying for caregiving all this time, and I don't even have the money to move. What about Mom's care? I'll take care of the money for caregiving and everything else, since I'm employed at a major company and not a small local one like Felicity's. I've got enough money. Hearing that, my dad slapped my back and said, "All right, Felicity, go pack your bags and get out today." He looked pleased, as if he had secured a high-quality parasite host. "Get out today. It's snowing outside, where does he expect me to live? Why? This is ridiculous." I couldn't help but voice my true feelings. "It's not ridiculous. You're stupid. Listen, I'll only say this once, so hear it well. I'm going to live with my parents since I have a kid. You, being broke, should leave. I looked at my parents in disbelief. Even my mom, whom I had desperately cared for, smiled and said, I want to be with my grandchild, give up. My dad even started packing my things into a bag and threw it at me while saying, See? Get out. Please wait a few days until I find a place to live. I pleaded, but he forcibly pulled my arm and I was thrown out of the house. No matter how many times I rang the intercom, it was ignored. After being manipulated by my parents for so long. And now by my brother. My life isn't a toy. I had always smiled in the past, despite being treated coldly, as a form of self-defense. But both my parents and brother are completely mistaken. They think it's okay because nothing bothers her. It's not a joke. Don't mess with me. I left my home crying, wandering the streets at night. And somehow found a taxi, then stayed at a motel. When I contacted a friend who lived locally, by some miracle, she said I could stay at her place for a while. Friends are truly treasures. Relying on her, I managed to save money. And eventually restored enough savings to live on my own again. I haven't saved enough to leave my hometown yet. But I don't want to have anything to do with my family anymore. So I want to move further away. I've decided to move out of the state once I save more money. That was my plan. However, about 2 years after that night, my dad and Mike suddenly showed up at my place. It seems they had tracked down this address at the municipal office. Who might you be? I deliberately spoke to them as if they were strangers. Then, both knelt down together and apologized deeply, showing repentance. Please, help us. We want you to drive out Mike's wife from our house. My dad pleaded with tears in his eyes. When I asked what was going on, it seemed the family home had gotten into a mess. After giving birth, Sandra had settled into momhood enough to laugh and say, I don't want to live with you pathetic people anymore. And kicked out Mike and my parents from the house. Moreover, my dad, completely charmed by Sandra, had managed to be manipulated into changing the house's registration into Sandra's name. It was more like he had given the house to her rather than lost it. I had heard that Sandra had originally fallen for Mike at first sight and pursued him ardently until they got together. But even at that time, I felt something was off. Mike, who was a charming and cute child, had grown up to be a burly man covered in hair from practicing judo. Far from handsome. Sandra, thin and cute, could have chosen any man she wanted. Why she fell for him was beyond me. In reality, Sandra was after Mike's money, and there were other men involved. The child's dad was supposedly Mike, but she continued her affairs even after marriage. After a quarrel between Mike and Sandra about this, the next day, everyone was kicked out of the house. That's probably because Sandra, sensing that her affair might come to light someday, cleverly manipulated my dad to change the house's registration. They're all fools. And now, they're not even living with the grandchild they were so looking forward to, and everything has backfired. In addition to that, Sandra had been secretly using my mom's credit card. And by the time I noticed, she had maxed it out buying appliances and jewelry. Well, she seemed like the type to have sticky fingers. I had always had a bad feeling about her. So hearing this didn't really surprise me, it felt more like as expected. I don't really have parents or a brother in my life. So, let me ask again, who are you? At that moment, the color drained from my dad and brother's faces. Are you going to abandon us too? Since then, Mom has become bedridden and can't even sit in a wheelchair. Don't you feel sorry for her being kicked out? My dad shouted. Weren't you the ones who kicked me out because you wanted to be with your grandchild? Mom told me to give up, so I gave up being part of your family. And it's Dad's fault I was kicked out because he changed the property's title, right? Unable to say anything, my dad just clenched his teeth. Wait, Felicity. We're family, let's help each other. Mike reached out his hand, but I slapped it away. When I was caring for Mom, you who refused to call me even though I asked him many times to help me because it was hard for me to be alone, would say that? Well, that's... As Mike struggled for words, my dad shouted. Forget about Mike for a second, don't you have any gratitude towards your parents? Have you forgotten all the favors we've done for you? Hearing that, I narrowed my eyes and glared at them both. I thought I owed you for raising me, so I quit the job I loved to live with you. And contributed money. I put up with everything, but you kicked me out. I'm not naive enough to still say thank you after all that. We've apologized for that. So an apology fixes everything? Then I'll apologize too. Sorry for abandoning you. I apologize, but I won't help. But please forgive me. What are you saying? You're so insolent. As my dad lunged at me, I instinctively used the self-defense techniques I had learned at school. Ouch, 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 he cried out, crouching on the spot. Mike, instead of caring for our dad, just stared at me in astonishment. I threw salt at them from the entranceway, feeling a strong urge to drive them away. Ah, they cried, covering their eyes. Don't show me those greedy faces anymore. Go back home. I yelled as I threw more salt, pushing them out the door. People passing by turned their heads at my voice. But my anger was too high to feel embarrassed. Then my dad shouted, Wait. If we talk, we'll surely understand each other. We're family by blood. Sorry, but I think the people I'm related to by blood are the last ones I can understand in this world. Really, there are no decent people in this family but me. Don't involve me in your lives ever again. Unable to open their eyes from the salt, they hesitated and then retreated from the entrance. I managed to keep them away from my room. Listen, I'll say this one last time. Don't ever involve me again. I consider all my family dead, so even if something happens to you, I won't visit you in the hospital or attend your funeral. I glared at them one last time and closed the front door. They lingered at the door saying, We just want to talk, but when I threatened to call the police, they finally left. Afterward, I received several letters from my dad. Apparently, my parents had moved in with my aunt, his sister. The letters pleaded for help, saying they felt sorry for themselves, but to me, it was my aunt who deserved sympathy for having to take in the elderly couple. Ultimately, in the third letter, it was revealed that my dad had pushed the caregiving responsibilities onto my aunt, which caused trouble with her husband. And they were kicked out again. Now they were renting a cheap apartment, while trying to regain their family home, fighting again with Sandra. They probably didn't have the money to hire a lawyer or to take good advice. And since my dad had made the title change himself, there seemed little chance of winning. Mike was unable to divorce Sandra and lived separately and accidentally got involved with another woman, labeled as a cheater. The woman he got involved with was supposedly a friend of Sandra's. Likely a honey trap, but there's no proof. In the end, the divorce talks were stuck with Mike demanding compensation, claiming the household fell apart because of my wife's cheating, and Sandra countering, portraying herself as a tragic wife, saying, "He claims I cheated while raising a child without proof, but in fact, he was the one cheating," demanding a high compensation and child support since neither had proof of the other's infidelity. What a messy situation, yikes. In the meantime, I got married to someone I met while switching jobs for the umpteenth time. It was an office romance, so we were cautious about dating publicly. Instead, we rented apartments close to each other and went back and forth, spending most days at one place or the other, essentially living together. One day, he casually proposed, saying, "This actress is getting married. Shall we?" It felt like he was suggesting a trip to the convenience store, which is still a fond memory for me. We're both down-to-earth types who aren't good at making a show, so I'm glad he didn't go for a flashy surprise. I'm the type who doesn't show much reaction, so it would have been awkward to respond. But life is full of surprises, it seems. 2 years into our marriage, I found myself pregnant with triplets, having never had siblings or much experience with small children. I was completely overwhelmed. It's hard enough with one, let alone 3. But fortunately, my husband and in-laws were very supportive, and somehow we're managing. We had 1 boy and 2 girls. When I found out, I was determined to love them equally. But as it turns out, that resolution was unnecessary, because all the children are adorable. I end up giving my all to all 3 of them anyway. Of course, with 3, it's not always possible to hold hands with mommy equally. In such cases, we make it fun by saying, after 100 steps, it's someone else's turn. But kids can be pretty unpredictable. 1 minute they're all about mom, and the next they're like, "Today, I want dad's hand." Well, it seems to the kids that both their dad and mom love them equally, which is all I could ask for. From now on, true to my name, I'll build a bright, happy family for everyone, and then, the 3 of them, together, scribble all over the walls of our new house with crayons. Hey! That doesn't make mommy and daddy happy, stop that. They do everything together, even this, oh well, the walls are now colorful. Alrighty, time to grab the laundry detergent and get back to work. Being a mom is a never-ending journey. Lauren. I've brought some snacks. Let's have some coffee. My mother-in-law returned from shopping and handed me a bag full of peanut snacks. What? Something wrong? I'm allergic to peanuts. Oh. Was that so? Sorry. Despite knowing I'm allergic, my mother-in-law intentionally buys peanut snacks. Her blatant harassment has been exhausting. My name is Lauren, a 29-year-old housewife. I originally met my husband Jack at work, where he was my senior. Our relationship grew through work, and we eventually got married. I quit my job and moved in with Jack's parents. Initially, I thought living with his kind parents would be manageable. However, my mother-in-law's attitude changed over time. "Since you're the daughter-in-law, you should do all the household chores." What? What? Got a problem? You're a housewife, aren't you? It's only natural since Jack is providing for you. Ah, yes. Even though my mother-in-law had promised to share household duties before our marriage, suddenly, it all fell on me. While she helps out when Jack and my father-in-law are around, during weekdays, when it's just the 2 of us, she dumps all the chores on me. If it were only that, it would have been better. When you wipe with water, make sure to dry it as well, or you'll leave water spots. Understood. Okay, redo it from scratch. Yes. My mother-in-law constantly criticizes my cleaning, forcing me to redo everything if she finds any spot she dislikes. It's surprising you even considered becoming a housewife. You hardly did any bridal training. It's a nuisance having someone like you marry into the family. Sorry. Learn the household chores faster, will you? Yes. While I clean, my mother-in-law lounges around watching TV, occasionally throwing complaints or sarcastic remarks my way. Before marriage, my mother-in-law was kind, so I was bewildered by how much she changed after we started living together. Why are you still cleaning there? It's nearly evening. Haven't you done the shopping yet? No, I haven't yet. Hurry up and finish so you can go buy groceries for dinner. Understood. Every day, I'm overworked and criticized by my mother-in-law. However, when Jack or my father-in-law is around, she stops all complaints and sarcasm, pretending nothing's wrong. When they return from work, she brightly says, "Welcome back. Dinner is ready, even though I was the one who cooked. Today, I tried making clam chowder. How is it?" "Yeah, it's good. This soup is unusual for us. My mother-in-law usually only makes vegetable soup." So my father-in-law seemed surprised when clam chowder was served. I thought I'd expand my repertoire, so I learned how to make it from Lauren. Right, Lauren? My mother-in-law looked at me with a piercing gaze. Ah, yes. That's nice. I couldn't admit that I made it, forced to go along with her story. My mother-in-law pretends she does all the household chores herself. Oh, did you rearrange the decor? It looks cleaner. Yes. With the family growing, I thought I'd tidy up a bit. That's nice. In reality, under my mother-in-law's orders, I had moved and organized heavy items by myself during the day. Without realizing it, Jack sometimes admonished me. Don't push all the chores onto my mom. You should be more proactive. You're a housewife. Deceived by my mother-in-law's act, Jack was fooled. Unable to speak the truth, all I could do was endure. Taking advantage of my silence, my mother-in-law's harassment only escalated. Today, I'll go shopping. It was unusual for my mother-in-law to offer to shop, so I wondered what was up. Then, a few minutes later, she returned and said, "Lauren, I've brought some snacks. Let's have coffee," and she handed me the snacks. It was the first time Mom had bought snacks for me, and I wondered why she was being so kind today. Ah, thank you. However, I was shocked when I looked inside the shopping bag. What? What's wrong? Grinning, my mother-in-law peered into my face. I'm allergic to peanuts." "Oh. Was that so? Sorry." Despite my mother-in-law knowing about my peanut allergy, she deliberately bought only peanut snacks. If I had eaten them by mistake, it would have been disastrous. Sorry. My mother-in-law chuckled continuously, seemingly amused by harassing me. I was fed up with her behavior. One day, while I was out shopping, my mother-in-law called. "Yes, hello?" My hand slipped and I accidentally dropped a flower pot from the balcony onto your car. Sorry about that. It wasn't on purpose, so forgive me, okay? I won't compensate though. I'm currently driving, you know? What? So, I'm out shopping in my car right now. Which means the car you dropped the flower pot on must be Jack's, right? What? No way. It seemed my mother-in-law intended to harass me by dropping the flower pot onto a car. But she mistakenly dropped it on Jack's car instead. Please check again. I could hear my mother-in-law panicking and rushing down the stairs over the phone. No way, it's true. The colors are the same and they look quite similar. It's understandable that you couldn't tell them apart from above. Wait a minute. Why is Jack's car here? Your car is always parked here. Why today of all days? That day, Jack had taken a day off and said he wouldn't use the car. So I swapped our usual parking spots to make parking smoother. It was a good thing I did. What am I supposed to tell Jack? My mother-in-law hadn't anticipated that it would be Jack's car. She was visibly flustered. I had to struggle to hold back my laughter. You can say the same thing you told me. Just say it wasn't on purpose and apologize, and I'm sure Jack will forgive you. Apologizing won't fix this. It's Jack's car. That really made me angry. So, it's okay to do whatever to my car as long as you apologize? Of course. You don't even work. So you being cheeky enough to have your own car is outrageous. You don't even need a car. What about Jack? He uses his car for commuting every day. What will he do for work tomorrow? It's a punishment for trying to harass me. You deserve it. I said it wasn't on purpose. It's pretty obvious that it was. Enough. I can't talk to you. My mother-in-law hung up the phone. Curious about what happened next, I cut my shopping short and headed home. When I arrived home and saw Jack's car, the windshield was shattered. Much worse than I imagined. Jack really liked his car and used it daily for work. So I worried he would be very upset. I hurried inside. Ah, welcome back. Despite my worries, Jack was as usual. My father-in-law was also acting normal. So they probably didn't know about the car yet. I decided not to tell Jack immediately and confronted my mother-in-law first. Mother, haven't you said anything about the car? The car? What about it? My mother-in-law feigned ignorance. Jack's car. Are you planning to keep quiet about it? You're saying I damaged Jack's car? What? I was speaking quietly so Jack wouldn't hear. But suddenly my mother-in-law raised her voice. Hearing that, Jack asked, "What happened to my car?" Apparently, Lauren damaged your car. Mother, seriously? It seemed my mother-in-law was planning to blame it all on me. Is that so? I'll go check. Jack hurried to the entrance. It's his precious car, after all. You're going to get in trouble. My mother-in-law smirked. What is this? Jack's voice came from outside, unable to hide his shock at the state of his car. Why has it turned out like this? After checking the car, Jack then confronted me. Don't be too mad. Lauren didn't mean any harm, and she said she'll compensate. What? I was appalled by my mother-in-law's selfishness. That's unavoidable, but why is the windshield shattered by a flower pot? What happened? Jack seemed more puzzled than angry. Lauren, did you do this on purpose? Mother, enough is enough. I had reached my limit. Hearing our commotion at the entrance, my father-in-law came over. What's this? It's terrible. Right? Lauren was the one who did it. What? Really? Everyone turned to look at me. Then, I said, there's something I want everyone to hear. And took out my cell phone. I started playing a recorded conversation. It was the call my mother-in-law had just made to me. Actually, I had prepared for this moment, fearing future harassment. I had bought a voice recorder and installed an app to record phone calls. And it paid off today. Hey! What is this about? My mother-in-law tried to grab my phone, but my father-in-law stopped her. Just be quiet. My phone had recorded the sound of the pot falling from the balcony. And my mother-in-law's panicked voice upon realizing it hit Jack's car. Seeing my mother-in-law's defeated slump, Jack and my father-in-law looked furious after hearing the entire conversation. Mom, what's this all about? You just said Lauren did it, didn't you? Well, that's... Confronted by the two, my mother-in-law looked like she might burst into tears any moment. Why did you even take the pot from the entrance to the balcony? Were you really trying to damage Lauren's car on purpose? No. That's when I revealed all the harassment my mother-in-law had subjected me to. So that was it. Sorry for not noticing sooner. I'm really sorry. Upon learning everything, they both apologized to me. My mother-in-law stayed silent, looking down. I can't live with Mom anymore. I'm moving out of this house. What? I don't want to see your face for a while. Oh no. It's only right. You have no right to stop this. I'm sorry. I'll apologize. It's too late. It's a shame, especially now that we're expecting a grandchild. Grandchild? Indeed, I found out a few days ago that I was pregnant. I had told Jack. But we were planning to surprise our parents and hadn't told them yet. What? You're pregnant? I didn't intend to announce it this way, but since we're leaving, I thought I should tell you at the end. I can't believe it. My mother-in-law, who had been looking forward to a grandchild, was even more disheartened when she learned of my pregnancy. So you won't let me see the baby once it's born? Of course. After what you've done, we can't trust you not to harm her. I won't do anything. You've been horrible to Lauren. We can't trust you. Jack shouted, and my mother-in-law had no reply. It's a shame, but it's your own fault. This is what happens when you engage in such foolishness. I'm sorry. My mother-in-law begged for forgiveness repeatedly. But considering everything she had done, I couldn't forgive her. I can't forgive you. Oh no. Afterwards, Jack and I moved out and started our own life. My mother-in-law seemed to remain depressed, staying in her room and hardly doing any household chores, often arguing with my father-in-law. As for me, being away from my mother-in-law allowed me to finally live peacefully. Thanks to that, I was able to give birth to a healthy baby girl as planned. We rented a house near my parents, where I could raise my child safely and happily. And she's growing up well. Our days are calm and filled with happiness. Later, my mother-in-law sent apology letters and emails, showing she was reflecting on her actions. Seeing this, I decided to let her meet her granddaughter. I was prepared to cut ties again at any hint of unpleasantness. But my mother-in-law seemed to understand and didn't say anything inappropriate. Now, I'm even considering visiting her occasionally. Kevin's the one who owns this house, and he's your dad's actual son. Wait, what? The day after the funeral of my cancer-stricken dad, my sister-in-law Tiffany, along with my brother, came to visit our family home and began scolding my mom and me vigorously. Tiffany, this is our house, isn't it? It's absurd to tell us to leave. When my mom said this, Tiffany glared at us. No, no. Can you please stop acting as if it's your own house? Look, Ashley. Don't just stand there dazed, hurry up and start packing to move. I looked at my brother for help, and he hung his head and muttered softly. That might be true. See? Even Kevin agrees, so hurry up and leave. Your dad is no longer here. Furious as if Tiffany had been waiting for my dad's death, I clenched my fists, ready to unleash all my feelings at her, right at that moment. My name is Ashley. I was raised by a single mom before I even started elementary school. The only relative I remember having was my mom. We had no one else to rely on. So my mom worked from morning till night, and I was left to fend for myself at home. Even as a child, I understood our financial hardships. We lived in a crumbling apartment with shared bath and toilet facilities at one point. Yet, my mom always kept smiling and took good care of me. Seeing her like that, I couldn't bring myself to say I was lonely or sad. I did my best not to trouble her. I tried not to be selfish, and at school, I kept my grades up and behaved quietly. It was honestly hard not to express myself, but I endured for my mom's sake. When I was in middle school, my mom mentioned she was thinking about marrying another guy. Ashley, I'm thinking of marrying Dylan. I want to know how you feel. So please talk to me honestly. I knew that my mom had been dating Dylan for a few years. I had met him a few times, as he took me to amusement parks. Ashley, you don't have to call me Dad, I won't force you. But I really do care about you just like your mom does. Thank you. Understanding that Dylan was a good man, I was all for their remarriage. Most of all, I was happy to see my mom smiling more. And there was no way I could oppose it. Dylan cherished me greatly, and being a business owner, he promised to support us financially. It was a relief to think that my mom wouldn't have to work tirelessly anymore. Ashley, I think I've mentioned this before, but Dylan has a son. He's 7 years older than you. He's a very reliable older brother. His name is Kevin. Nice to meet you. I had heard about him, but meeting him only after living together. My new brother seemed as kind as Dylan. Having been lonely as an only child, I was happy to have a brother. However, my brother thought differently. The moment they find out Dad's a business owner, people change their tune. You're just one of them. That's not true. I just want Mom to be happy. You think your mom's after his money, don't you? Well, Dad will realize it soon enough, so I won't say anything. While he was smiling and talking to our parents, he showed his true colors when it was just the two of us, constantly making sarcastic remarks to me, but fortunately, he never said anything to my mom. I endured it alone, thinking that it would lead to a harmonious family life. Years went by, and after 4 years, my brother began to lose interest in making snide remarks, and didn't pay much attention to me anymore. I also kept a moderate distance from my brother. Kevin, congratulations on graduating from university. Good luck living on your own. Yeah, I'll come home every now and then. Having graduated from university, my brother started working at Dylan's company. Although the family home was within commuting distance, he began living on his own. My mom, treating him like her own child, was happy and supportive. A few years after my brother moved out of our family home, I was working as a professional. By then, I had started calling Dylan Dad, and was very close to him, not feeling at all like he was my stepdad. One day, my brother contacted me saying he had something important to discuss, and asked us to be home on Saturday. We waited anxiously. This is Tiffany, whom I'm dating. We're thinking of getting married. Nice to meet you, I'm Tiffany. I met Kevin while working as a receptionist at your dad's company. We're already living together. Tiffany seemed childish for her age, which is the same as mine. 28, yet she was as beautiful as one would expect a receptionist to be. Aware of her beauty, she exhibited a confident attitude that made her a bit difficult to interact with. However, since she worked at my dad's company, she must be competent at her job. Tiffany and Kevin, I'm so happy for you two on your marriage. We need to celebrate. Thank you so much, Dad. Congratulations. Of course, my parents and I congratulated the two, and the greetings concluded smoothly. However, from then on, whenever I met Tiffany, she would make sarcastic remarks. Ashley, was it? Getting too carried away with Kevin's dad because he likes you, huh? Well, I'm superior, and soon I'll be the favored one. That's not true. I'm not getting carried away. That attitude of yours is so annoying. Hey, could you not attend our wedding? I don't want people to think such an ugly person is part of the family. Tiffany clearly disliked me. She never made such remarks in public or in front of my parents or brother, but did so when we were alone. She smiled and treated me like a dear sister in front of everyone, so nobody would suspect that Tiffany was being sarcastic towards me in private. If you really want to be part of our wedding, a nice gift is a must. And dress plainly so you don't stand out. Okay, I understand. Just listen to me, and I won't give you a hard time. Not wanting to worsen my relationship with my brother, I complied with all of Tiffany's demands. I attended their wedding quietly, as Tiffany had instructed. Several months after my brother's wedding, unfortunately, cancer was discovered in my dad, and he had to undergo treatment. When the cancer was detected, he was already given only a few months to live. My mom became despondent and increasingly unstable mentally. It can't be true that Dad has cancer, the doctors are lying. He was even at work just yesterday. Mom. Dad has been hospitalized since yesterday. Remember, we went to visit him together? He's not ill at all. Why would he be hospitalized? As my dad battled cancer, I also had to support my mom's psychiatric visits and emotional care, which drained me both mentally and physically. My brother was swamped with handling the company instead of our dad, and wasn't available to chat. So, I approached Tiffany to see if she could help out. Tiffany, I know you're busy, but could you help with Mom's hospital visits or the laundry for the hospital? Why should I do such dirty jobs? I'm not even related by blood. Why should I have to do them? Even just for a day would help. I've used up all my leave and can't take any more off. Maybe you could accompany her to the hospital every Monday. The company will be fine without someone useless like you. If you're so useless, at least do the dirty work properly. Tiffany was abusive not just towards me, but also towards my parents. I wanted to discuss this with my brother, but seeing him swamped with work made me reluctant to bother him. I took on everything myself, and kept my thoughts about Tiffany to myself. During this time, despite the treatment, my dad passed away. Just before he died, we were called by his doctor to come to the hospital to be with him in his final moments. However, Tiffany didn't show up at my dad's side even an hour after. She said she was finishing shopping. My dad, realizing he didn't have much time, started to speak in a faint voice. Just then, Tiffany entered the hospital room with a cheerfulness that seemed out of place. "I'm late." "How are you doing, Dad?" I was about to reprimand her when my dad stopped me and took a breath before he began to speak. "Kevin, after I'm gone, I'm worried about Mom and Ashley. Could you live with them?" "I understand. Don't worry, it'll be okay." After hearing my brother's response, my dad quietly passed away. As silence enveloped the room, my mom began to cry, collapsing in grief. I embraced my sobbing mom's shoulders, and then I caught sight of Tiffany smirking. The day after my dad's funeral, in accordance with his will, the couple came to the family home. "Kevin, thank you so much for coming. Dad would be pleased. Come in. Mom, you don't need to worry about anything." They welcomed the couple inside. Then, Tiffany suddenly started shouting, "Kevin's the one who owns this house, and he's your dad's actual son. You outsiders don't belong here. Get out." "Wait, what?" "Tiffany, this is our house, isn't it? It's absurd to tell us to leave." When my mom said this, Tiffany glared at us. "No, no. Can you please stop acting as if it's your own house? Look, Ashley. Don't just stand there dazed, hurry up and start packing to move." Desperately seeking help, I looked at my brother, who hung his head and muttered softly, "That might be true. See? Even Kevin says so, so hurry up and leave. Your dad-in-law is no longer here." Furious as if Tiffany had been waiting for my dad's death, I clenched my fists, ready to unleash all my feelings at her, right at that moment. "Outsiders like you better leave quickly, Tiffany." "Huh?" Kevin spoke in a low voice to Tiffany. Then, she began to speak, choking on her words. "What are you talking about, Kevin? You've got it all wrong." "No, I'm not wrong. I was speaking to you, Tiffany." Angered by Kevin's unexpected response, Tiffany directed her rage towards me. "Ashley, you must have seduced Kevin, right? Planning to take all of Father's and Kevin's inheritance for yourself." "There's no way Ashley would seduce me. She's always been awkward and keeps to herself. She couldn't possibly do that." Tiffany, who began to blame me, was met with fierce anger from Kevin, who then started recounting the past. I wasn't thrilled about Dad getting married again. I would always say Ashley was just after his money. But I got nervous that Mom would rat me out to Dad, and I'd catch a lecture. Honestly, I also thought it would be easier if I told my mom about Kevin's behavior. However, seeing my parents happy together, I couldn't bring myself to snitch. And I wanted them to understand that I wasn't after the money, so I endured. Despite that, Ashley never snitched on me. Even Mom showered both me and Ashley with equal love. Ashley just kept enduring my treatment. That's why I stopped blaming her. That's because she's obviously after the money. No. Even now, Ashley has taken on the care of our parents by herself, never complaining and even taking care of Dad, who isn't blood related. That's because it was for the money. You didn't take care of anyone, did you? You shouldn't be blaming Ashley. At my brother's words, Tiffany paled and began to panic at his accusation. Kevin, you're just being deceived by Ashley. It's ridiculous to side with them. Shut up. You just want my money, don't you? No, that's not true. Then how do you explain the splurging with my card right after Dad died? That is, according to my brother, Tiffany claimed it was for their new life and used his card to splurge. The items she bought weren't furniture but accessories. And brand name clothes for herself. You thought I would inherit everything, but I only inherited the company. And Ashley inherited everything else, including the house. There's no money coming your way. No, that's not true. What my brother is saying is true. He willingly chose to only take over the company. And he left the house for me and Mom so we could live there. It was when we were surrounding our dad, who had little time left, at the hospital before Tiffany arrived. My dad, his consciousness fading, spoke about the inheritance. Kevin, can I leave the company to you? Of course, I might not do as well as Dad, but leave it to me. In return, Dad, I want to leave the house and assets to Ashley. I want to ensure Mom and Ashley don't face any hardships. You were thinking that far ahead for Ashley and the others. Thank you. I was surprised that my not-so-close brother had thought so much about us. I also remember feeling happy. Unaware of this fact, Tiffany's attempt to snatch the inheritance just made me sigh. Tiffany, it's obvious to everyone what you're up to. You, as a daughter-in-law, really have no business getting involved in the inheritance issue. Hearing my words, Tiffany lunged at me with a demonic expression. How dare you? Her grip was surprisingly strong, and I couldn't shake her off. Then, my brother grabbed her hand and freed my neck. Stop it, Tiffany. Enough is enough. But it's Ashley who's at fault. While being restrained by my brother, Tiffany flailed her arms and continued to resist. Still, my brother sighed and then told her, Tiffany, let's get a divorce. Wha? No, that's not true. When my brother confronted Tiffany with divorce, she suddenly became subdued. As my brother let go of her, she collapsed to the ground, losing her support. Several months later, my brother's divorce was finalized. According to him, he decided not to ask for compensation in exchange for Tiffany returning the money she had spent. However, rumors of her misusing my brother's money spread throughout the company, making it awkward for Tiffany, who then felt compelled to resign voluntarily. Even without a job, chased by debt repayments, Tiffany searched for new employment, while working multiple part-time jobs from dawn till dusk. Meanwhile, I started living in the house my dad left us, together with my mom and brother. The business my brother inherited from our dad is also doing well. My mom has come to terms with my dad's death and is gradually recovering. Every year, we visit my dad's grave together. Dad, we all came together today. By the way, Dad, Ashley has found someone nice. He's a bit unreliable, though. Hey. Come on. Sorry. But, he really cares about Ashley. Yeah. Dad, please keep watching over us. At my dad's grave, I clasp my hands together and report that today, just like every day, we're supporting one another as a family.